The funeral home's carpet was the ugliest shade of burgundy I'd ever seen, but I kept staring at it because looking at Miranda's face might have made me commit a crime. She stood there in a designer black dress she'd probably bought specifically for this occasion, clutching custody papers like they were winning lottery tickets while my husband's body wasn't even cold yet. "This house belongs to his children," she screamed, spittle flying. "I'm taking it for their future." I reached into my purse, the same black leather one Daniel had given me for our anniversary, and pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying for the past 3 days. My hands didn't shake. I'd practiced this moment. "Speaking of futures, here's the life insurance payout notification, $2 million to the beneficiary, me. The kids' trusts are already funded. You get nothing." The sound she made wasn't human. It was something between a shriek and a gasp, like a banshee choking on its own rage. But to understand why that moment was so sweet, you need to know how we got there. I met Daniel Fitzgerald at a coffee shop, which sounds like a romantic comedy but was actually more like a hostage situation. His 8-year-old son Jamie had just projectile vomited on my laptop, and his 6-year-old daughter Sophia was using my research papers as napkins. "I am so sorry," Daniel had said, trying to wrangle both kids while pulling out his wallet. "Please let me pay for everything, the laptop, the papers, your dry cleaning, your therapy." I'd laughed despite myself. Therapy might be necessary. That was my dissertation. His face went white. "Oh God. Oh no. Kids, apologize right now." "It's okay," I'd said, surprising myself. "I have backups. Plus, I study childhood psychology. This is basically field research." That's how it started. Daniel, overwhelmed single dad. Me, Natalie Brooks, doctoral candidate who thought she understood children until she met his. Their mother and I divorced 2 years ago, he'd explained over coffee, his treat. "Obviously, while the kids destroyed the shop's toy corner, she gets them weekends." "I get them. Well, all the other time. Must be hard," I'd said, watching Sophia color outside the lines with aggressive determination. "You have no idea." He'd looked at me then, really looked at me. "You're not running away screaming. That's new." I should have run. Everything about Daniel came with complications. The kids who'd been traumatized by their parents' bitter divorce, the ex-wife who treated him like an ATM with visitation rights, the exhaustion that lined his face from working 60-hour weeks to pay for 2 households. But he was also brilliant, a software engineer who'd created several successful apps. Funny, when the kids gave him 5 seconds to breathe, and underneath all the chaos, genuinely kind. Our first date required 3 babysitters, the first 2 quit, and ended with him falling asleep in his pasta. Our second date was interrupted by Miranda calling 17 times because Jamie had a fever that mysteriously vanished when Daniel rushed over. By our third date, I understood what I was signing up for. "She's going to make your life hell," Daniel warned me. "Miranda doesn't want me, but she doesn't want me happy either." He was wrong about one thing. She didn't just want him unhappy, she wanted him destroyed. Miranda Fitzgerald was like a Pinterest board, gained sentience and chose violence. Everything about her was curated, from her yoga instructor body to her Instagram perfect life. She'd left Daniel for her CrossFit coach, claiming he didn't support her journey to self-actualization. Translation: she wanted to be an influencer, and a software engineer husband didn't fit her brand. But the second Daniel started dating me, suddenly she remembered what a wonderful father he was, how important family unity was, how the children needed stability. "The kids are confused," she'd text at 2 a.m. Sophia cried herself to sleep asking why daddy loves his new friend more than mommy. "Jamie says you ignore him when she's around." A real woman would understand that the children come first. Daniel saved every text, every email, every voicemail. His lawyer had advised him to document everything. Smart lawyer. We'd been dating 6 months when Miranda played her first big card. She took Daniel back to court for more child support, claiming his lifestyle had improved since he was wasting money on girlfriends instead of his children. "How much does she want?" I'd asked, reading through the court documents. "An extra $2,000 a month," Daniel said flatly, "on top of the $3,000 she already gets." "For what?" "Sophia needs ballet lessons at the exclusive studio. Jamie requires a specialized tutor, and they both need therapy to deal with the trauma of daddy's girlfriend." He'd laughed bitterly. The same therapy she refused to let them have during the actual divorce. The judge, thankfully, saw through it, but the legal fees ate up Daniel's savings. Miranda didn't care. Her new boyfriend, a real estate agent named Chad, because of course his name was Chad, was funding her legal crusade. That's when Daniel and I had our first real conversation about the future. "I can't propose to you," he'd said one night, both kids finally asleep. Not because I don't want to, but because she'll use it against you, I finished. She already calls you the homewrecker to the kids. If we get married, he couldn't finish. Then we don't get married, I said simply, we just live. But living wasn't simple with Miranda around. She had a sixth sense for our happiness and a gift for destroying it. Planning a vacation? Suddenly the kids couldn't leave the state because of their anxiety. Moving in together? The children needed stability evaluations first. Buying a new car? Clearly Daniel was hiding assets. The worst part was watching what it did to Jamie and Sophia. They were sweet kids underneath the trauma, but Miranda's manipulation was poisoning them slowly. She'd send them to our house with spy missions. Mommy wants to know if Natalie sleeps in Daddy's bed. Mommy says to look for expensive things and take pictures. This is child abuse, I told Daniel after finding Jamie photographing my jewelry box. I know, he said helplessly, but proving it in court is impossible. She's too smart, never puts anything in writing, always has plausible deniability. We survived 2 years like that, 2 years of Miranda's warfare, 2 years of court battles, poisoned weekends, and children used as weapons. But we also had 2 years of bedtime stories, homework help, and slowly earning the kids' trust. I like your pancakes better than Mom's, Sophia whispered one morning, but don't tell her I said that. Your secret's safe, I promised, adding extra chocolate chips. Jamie started asking me for help with his science projects instead of calling his mother. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Then Daniel got the contract that changed everything. A tech giant wanted to buy his latest app. The number was staggering, enough to secure everyone's future, including the kids' college funds. We can finally breathe, Daniel said, spinning me around our kitchen. No more living paycheck to paycheck. No more letting Miranda hold money over our heads. We were so naive. The acquisition went through on a Monday. By Wednesday, Miranda's lawyer had filed an emergency motion. She wanted 50% of the sale price, claiming it was a marital asset developed during their marriage. That's insane, our lawyer said. Daniel created this app 2 years after the divorce. She's claiming he used ideas from their marriage. Daniel explained, exhausted, says I was working on the concept while we were together. It was a lie, but proving it would take months and hundreds of thousands in legal fees, money we'd have to spend anyway, because Miranda knew Daniel would never risk losing. That's when Daniel made the decision that would save us all. I'm taking out life insurance, he announced after another brutal court hearing. $2 million policy. Daniel, don't talk like that. I'm not being morbid, he said firmly. I'm being practical. Miranda's trying to destroy us financially. If something happens to me, you and the kids need protection. The kids already have trusts from your grandparents, which Miranda can access as their guardian. This is different. This is for you, to fight her, if necessary, to protect them. If she tries to take everything, I was the beneficiary, not because he loved me more than his children, but because he knew I'd protect them in ways their mother never would. The policy was signed on a Thursday. Daniel died the following Tuesday. Heart attack at 38. No warning, no goodbye, just a normal morning where he kissed me goodbye, reminded Jamie about his science test, promised Sophia he'd braid her hair that night, and then, nothing. I got the call at work, collapsed at his desk. They said, nothing anyone could do. The next 72 hours were a blur, calling his parents, telling the children, making arrangements, all while Miranda played the grieving ex-wife to anyone who'd listen, despite having spent the last 3 years trying to destroy him. She showed up at our house the night before the funeral. I'll be taking the children now, she announced, as if they were packages to be collected. They want to stay here tonight, I said quietly. Their rooms are here, their things, their father is dead, she snapped. They need their mother. But Jamie and Sophia were already clinging to me, Sophia sobbing into my shirt while Jamie tried to be brave. They'd lived with us primarily for the last year. Daniel had won that battle at least. Please, Sophia whispered, can't we stay with Natalie? Miranda's face went cold. Fine, one night, but we'll be discussing permanent arrangements tomorrow. The funeral was beautiful. Daniel's co-workers spoke about his brilliance. His parents shared childhood stories. I talked about his kindness, his humor, his love for his children. Even Jamie and Sophia stood up, sharing memories that made everyone cry. Everyone except Miranda, who spent the service texting with someone, probably her lawyer. She cornered me at the reception, in front of Daniel's family and friends. We need to talk about the house, she hissed. Now, really? The children deserve stability. That house is their home. I'm taking it. You can't just. This house belongs to his children, she screamed. pulling out custody papers. I'm taking it for their future. The room went silent. Everyone stared. Miranda had calculated this perfectly, make a scene at the funeral, where I couldn't fight back without looking heartless. But she'd miscalculated one thing. I'd been preparing for this moment since the day Daniel took out that life insurance policy. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. Inside were 3 documents: the life insurance payout notification, the kids' trust fund statements showing they were fully funded through college, and a copy of Daniel's will leaving the house to me. Speaking of futures, here's the life insurance payout notification, $2 million to the beneficiary, me. The kids' trusts are already funded. You get nothing. She snatched the papers, reading frantically. Her face went from red to white to purple. This is fraud. He can't. The children. I'll contest this. Go ahead, I said calmly. Contest away. The trusts are ironclad. You can't touch them for anything except education and medical expenses. The house is mine, free and clear. And the life insurance? Perfectly legal. He could name anyone he wanted. You manipulated him. I loved him. There's a difference. You're not even their real mother. No, I agreed. But I'm the one who helps with homework. Who knows Jamie's allergic to strawberries? Not peanuts like you keep telling schools. Who can braid Sophia's hair the way she likes? Who never missed a school play or soccer game because I was too busy with my new boyfriend? How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth? Fight for these kids? Refuse to let you destroy what's left of their stability? Daniel's mother stepped forward then. Eleanor Fitzgerald, 70 years old and tougher than nails. That's enough, Miranda, she said quietly. You've made enough of a scene at my son's funeral. Eleanor, surely you understand. I understand that my son spent the last 3 years of his life fighting you in court. I understand that you tried to claim ownership of work he did after your divorce. I understand that you're here not to mourn, but to grab what you can. The children will be fine with Natalie, Eleanor continued, as Daniel wished. As anyone with eyes can see they prefer. Miranda looked around the room, realizing she'd lost her audience. These people knew the truth. They'd watched Daniel struggle. They'd seen the court documents, the legal bills, the stress that probably contributed to his heart attack. This isn't over, she hissed at me. Actually, it is, I said. Your lawyer can contact mine. But fair warning, I now have $2 million to fight you with. Daniel made sure of that. She left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. The room stayed silent for a moment before conversation slowly resumed. Jamie tugged on my sleeve. Does this mean we can stay with you? I knelt down to his level. What do you want? To stay, he said immediately. Mom's house. It's not home. This is home. Sophia nodded, still crying. Daddy said you'd take care of us if something happened. He promised. Then you'll stay, I said simply. We'll make it work. It wasn't that simple. Of course. Miranda lawyered up immediately, demanding full custody and child support from Daniel's estate. But she hadn't counted on a few things. First, the guardian ad litem assigned to the case actually listened to the children. At 12 and 10, their preferences mattered, and they both chose to stay with me. Second, Daniel's meticulous record-keeping came back to haunt her. Every manipulative text, every false accusation, every time she'd used the children as weapons, all documented and submitted to the court. Third, the life insurance money meant I could match her lawyer for lawyer, motion for motion. For the first time, it was a fair fight. The final blow came from an unexpected source. Chad, Miranda's boyfriend, had been promising to marry her once she got her fair share of Daniel's estate. When it became clear that share was zero, he disappeared, leaving Miranda to pay her own legal bills. I can't afford to keep fighting, her lawyer told mine after 6 months. She's out of money and out of options. The custody arrangement was formalized. I became the children's legal guardian, with Miranda getting supervised visitation every other weekend. Supervised because the judge was concerned about her pattern of attempting to alienate the children from their father's chosen guardian. It's not fair, Miranda sobbed outside the courthouse. They're my children. They're Daniel's children too, I reminded her, and he made sure they'd be protected, from everything, including you. That was 2 years ago. Jamie's 14 now, taller than me and brilliant like his father. He builds apps in his spare time and talks about MIT. Sophia's 12, finally stopped crying herself to sleep, and has discovered she's actually good at ballet when it's not being used as a weapon in her parents' war. We live in the same house, the one Miranda tried to take. I've kept Daniel's office exactly as he left it, except for the coding books Jamie's added to the shelves. His picture sits on the mantel, surrounded by photos of the kids' accomplishments he'll never see. Miranda still has her supervised visits, Though the kids increasingly find excuses to skip them. I don't encourage it, but I don't force them either. They're old enough to know who fought for them and who fought for money. Do you think Dad knew? Jamie asked me recently, when he got the life insurance. Did he know something might happen? I think your dad wanted to make sure you were protected no matter what, I said carefully. He loved you more than anything. He loved you too, Sophia added. He said you were the best thing that happened to us after the divorce. All of us? All of us, she confirmed. He said you made us a real family again. We are a real family, not the one any of us planned, but real nonetheless, built on love and loss, protected by planning and paperwork, held together by choice rather than blood. Daniel's life insurance money is mostly untouched, invested for the future. I returned to work after taking time off to help the kids adjust. We don't live extravagantly. We don't need to. We have what matters. Every year on the anniversary of Daniel's death, we visit his grave together. Miranda tried to come once, with a photographer to document her grief. We chose a different day after that. Thank you, I whisper to his headstone while the kids arrange flowers. For trusting me, for protecting us, for making sure I could protect them. The wind rustles the leaves, and I choose to hear his answer in it. Take care of my babies, he'd said in the hospital when Sophia was born. Promise me, no matter what happens with Miranda, you'll take care of them. I kept that promise, with his help, even from beyond. $2 million. That's what he thought our future was worth. Enough to fight any battle, win any war, keep any promise. He was wrong. Of course, it was worth so much more. But the money helped. God, did it help? Especially that day at the funeral, when I got to hand Miranda that envelope and watch her realize that all her schemes, all her manipulation, all her greed had led to exactly what she deserved. Nothing. The house is full of laughter now. Jamie's coding competitions, Sophia's ballet recitals, family dinners where we talk about our days and remember Daniel without the shadow of court battles. I love you, Natalie, Sophia said last week, casual as breathing. I know you're not my real mom, but you're my real mom, you know? I know. Daniel knew too. That's why he made sure that when the worst happened, we'd be okay, more than okay, we'd be together. A real family, protected by love and life insurance. Exactly as he planned.
I've always believed that true character reveals itself in how people treat those they think can't benefit them. My name is Emma Miller, and this is how I learned just how right that belief was. Growing up, my parents taught me the value of hard work and humility. My father was a janitor at a prestigious tech company, and my mother cleaned houses for wealthy families. They worked themselves to the bone to give me an education, often going without so I could have what I needed. Emma, sweetheart, my mother would say, her hands rough from years of scrubbing. Knowledge is the one thing nobody can take from you. Those words echoed in my mind as I worked my way through college, studying finance and computer science. By day, I attended classes. By night, I cleaned offices just like my father. But I had a secret that kept me going. I was developing a revolutionary financial algorithm that could predict market trends with unprecedented accuracy. During my final year, while most students were partying, I was perfecting my program. Then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, everything changed. My algorithm caught the attention of a major investment firm. They offered me $75 million for it, plus a position on their board. I accepted the deal but kept my wealth hidden. I continued living modestly, investing wisely, and growing my fortune quietly. That's when I met James. He literally ran into me at a small cafe where I was working on my laptop. Hot coffee splashed across the table, barely missing my computer. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," he exclaimed, frantically grabbing napkins. His genuine distress made me laugh. "It's okay," I assured him, helping to clean up. "I'm Emma." "James, please let me buy you another coffee. It's the least I can do." One coffee led to dinner, and dinner led to more. James was kind, funny, and refreshingly down to earth. He worked as a high school teacher, passionate about making a difference in his students' lives. When he proposed 6 months later, I said yes without hesitation. Then I met his family. Patricia, my mother-in-law, lived in a sprawling house in an upscale neighborhood. Her husband, Robert, had passed away years ago, leaving her a comfortable inheritance. From our first meeting, she made it clear I wasn't what she'd envisioned for her son. "A cleaner's daughter," she said, eyeing me over her wine glass. "How quaint. James, darling, I thought you were dating that lovely doctor's daughter, Caroline." "Mom," James warned, but the tone was set. At every family gathering, Patricia found ways to remind me of my place. She'd ask me to help the catering staff, claiming I feel more comfortable in the kitchen. When James defended me, she'd laugh it off as just trying to make Emma feel at home. Her daughter, my sister-in-law Amanda, was cut from the same cloth. A successful real estate agent, she never missed an opportunity to flaunt her success or remind me of my humble beginnings. "Emma, dear," she'd say with false sweetness, "I have some clients looking for a cleaning service. Should I give them your mother's number?" I took it all in stride, partly because I knew the truth about my wealth, but mostly because I wanted to see people's true colors. James would squeeze my hand under the table, whispering apologies for his family's behavior, but never truly standing up to them. What they didn't know was that I had plans of my own. I've been quietly buying properties throughout the city, including several in Patricia's prestigious neighborhood. The mansion next door to hers had been on the market for months, and through a series of shell companies, I acquired it for $12 million. The annual family reunion was approaching, a 3-day affair where relatives from across the country gathered at Patricia's house. This year, however, would be different. "James, honey," Patricia announced at dinner a week before the reunion, "I've arranged the guest rooms. You'll stay in your old room, of course. Emma can use the basement. We need the good rooms for family who actually contribute to our gatherings." James shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, Emma's my wife. And as my daughter-in-law, she should be grateful for whatever accommodation she receives." Patricia cut in smoothly. "Besides, with her background, she's probably used to much worse." I simply smiled and said, "The basement will be fine, Patricia." If only she knew what was coming. The reunion began on a Friday. Cars filled Patricia's circular driveway as family members arrived. I helped carry luggage, serve drinks, and endured the usual snide comments about my background. That evening, as everyone settled into their luxurious guest rooms, I made my way to the basement with my small suitcase. The basement was cold and musty, with a narrow cot set up in the corner. As I sat on the creaking bed, I heard laughter floating down from above. Patricia's voice carried clearly through the vents. "Can you believe she actually took the basement without complaint? I told James he should have married Caroline. At least she knows how to carry herself in proper society." More laughter followed. I checked my phone. One new message from my property manager. "Everything is ready for tomorrow's inspection, Mrs. Miller. The mansion next door has been fully furnished according to your specifications." I smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow would certainly be interesting. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear. I woke early, my back aching from the basement cot, and made my way upstairs. The kitchen was already bustling with activity as Patricia directed the catering staff for the day's brunch. "Oh, Emma. Good. Since you're up, make yourself useful and help Maria with the dishes," Patricia commanded, not even looking in my direction. "And do try to stay out of sight when the guests arrive. We have some very important people coming today." I caught James' eye as he entered the kitchen. He looked pained but remained silent, reaching for his coffee. The familiar sting of his passive acceptance made me straighten my shoulders. Just a few more hours. "Actually," I said calmly, checking my watch, "I have an appointment this morning." Patricia's head snapped up. "An appointment? During our family reunion? How incredibly rude." "Now, Mom," James began weakly, but Amanda cut him off as she swept into the kitchen. "Mother, the Hendersons just pulled up. You know, the ones who bought that gorgeous mansion next door." She smirked at me. "They're my biggest clients this year. The sale was worth millions in commission." Patricia preened. "Wonderful. Emma, before you leave for whatever menial task you have planned, at least make yourself useful and help serve the Moses." I smiled. "I really must go. My real estate agent is waiting." "Real estate agent?" Amanda scoffed. "What, are you looking at studio apartments in the bad part of town?" The doorbell rang, and Patricia hurried to answer it, shooting me a warning look. I followed the group into the grand foyer, where a sophisticated woman in a sharp suit waited. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller," she said, smiling directly at me. "The mansion is ready for your final inspection." The room fell silent. Patricia's carefully crafted smile froze on her face. "There must be some mistake," she said with a forced laugh. "Emma isn't." "Emma Miller," I confirmed, stepping forward. "Owner of the mansion next door." Amanda's mimosa glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. That's impossible. I handled that sale. Through my shell corporation, yes, I said pleasantly. I believe your commission check was quite substantial. James stared at me, his coffee cup suspended halfway to his mouth. Emma, what's going on? Perhaps we should all sit down, I suggested, gesturing to the living room. I have quite a story to tell. Once everyone was seated, Patricia and Amanda perched on the edge of their seats like birds ready to take flight. I began. 7 years ago, I developed a financial algorithm that sold for $75 million, I said calmly. Since then, my investments have multiplied that many times over. The mansion next door is just one of many properties I own. But you let us think, Patricia sputtered, that I was a cleaning lady's daughter who married above her station. I finished. Yes, I did. And you all showed me exactly who you are through how you treated someone you thought was beneath you. This is absurd. Amanda stood up, her face flushed. Mother, she's clearly lying. My real estate agent cleared her throat. I can assure you, Mrs. Henderson, that Mrs. Miller's credentials are impeccable. In fact, she owns controlling interest in the development company that built this entire neighborhood. Patricia's face had gone from red to white. The entire neighborhood. Including this house, I confirmed quietly. I bought it last month when it was technically still under your late husband's estate. The paperwork was finalized yesterday. The silence that followed was deafening. James had sunk into his chair, his face a mask of shock and dawning realization. You mean? Patricia's voice trembled. This isn't my house anymore. It's mine, I said simply. Just like the basement where you made me sleep last night. Amanda jumped up. Mother, she can't do this. We'll fight it in court. You're welcome to try, I replied. My lawyers have ensured everything is perfectly legal. But right now, I'd like you both to leave my house. Leave, Patricia gasped. But where will I go? This is my home. Was your home, I corrected. Don't worry, I've arranged for temporary accommodations for you. There's a modest apartment available in the building where my parents used to work as janitors. I hear the basement unit is particularly cozy. The family gathering had devolved into chaos. Relatives whispered among themselves, some looking shocked, others secretly pleased to see Patricia's pride take such a fall. James finally found his voice. Emma, why didn't you tell me? He asked quietly. I turned to face my husband. Would it have made a difference? Would you have stood up to your mother's treatment of me if you'd known I was wealthy? Because if money is what it takes to earn basic respect in this family, then we have bigger problems than where I sleep. The real estate agent cleared her throat. Mrs. Miller, shall we proceed with the inspection of your new property? Yes, I said, standing. Patricia, I'll have my staff help you pack. You have until tomorrow evening to vacate the premises. As I walked toward the door, Patricia's voice rang out, suddenly honeyed and pleading. Emma, dear, surely we can discuss this. We're family, after all. I paused at the doorway, turning back to face her. Family? Let's talk about family, Patricia. Last Christmas, you seated me at the children's table and told everyone it was because I wouldn't know how to behave at the adults' dinner. Last month, you accidentally excluded me from James' birthday celebration. And just yesterday, you made me sleep in a basement because you said I wasn't good enough for a real room. I didn't mean, she stammered. Yes, you did, I said firmly. You meant every slight, every insult, every attempt to humiliate me. You showed me exactly who you are, Patricia. Now I'm showing you exactly who I am. The sound of my heels clicking on the marble floor echoed through the silent house as I walked out, head held high. Behind me, I could hear Patricia's sobs and Amanda's angry protests, but I didn't look back. The following weeks were a storm of activity and emotions. Patricia and Amanda moved out as required, though not without drama. They hired lawyers, of course, but as my legal team had predicted, every transaction was ironclad. I moved into the mansion next door, leaving James to decide his own path. The distance gave me time to think about our marriage and what it meant to build a life with someone who couldn't stand up for you. One evening, about a month after the revelation, my security team alerted me to a visitor. James stood at my front door, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. Can we talk? He asked quietly. I led him to my home office, a warm room filled with family photos, including one of my parents on their 30th anniversary. James' eyes fixed on it as he sat down. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he began. About everything. About us. I've also been seeing a therapist. I waited, letting him find his words. I failed you, Emma, not just at the reunion, but every time I let my mother treat you like you were beneath us. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but really, I was just being a coward. Yes, you were, I agreed softly. He winced but continued. The thing is, I kept wondering why you didn't tell me about your success. Then I remembered last Thanksgiving when Mom made that comment about your father being just a janitor, and I laughed. I actually laughed. Tears formed in his eyes. That's when you were going to tell me, wasn't it? I nodded. I had the papers in my bag. But watching you laugh at your own father-in-law, I realized that you were just like them. I was, he admitted. And that shame is mine to carry. But Emma, I want you to know what's happened since he left. He straightened in his chair. I resigned from my teaching position at Brighton Prep. This surprised me. James had taught at the prestigious private school for years. I took a job at Riverside High School instead, he continued. It's in the neighborhood where you grew up. The kids there, they remind me of you. Brilliant, determined, just needing someone to believe in them. And your mother? I haven't spoken to her since she moved out. She and Amanda have been trying to rally the family against you, but it backfired. Cousin Sarah came forward about how Mom had treated her when she married beneath her station. Then Uncle Robert shared stories about her behavior toward his second wife. It's like your courage in standing up to her gave others permission to speak their truth. I absorbed this information, noting the changes in James. He seemed more grounded, more present. There's more, he said. I've been volunteering at the community center where your mom used to work. Did you know they have a program teaching financial literacy to cleaning staff and janitors? I'm helping them expand it. Why are you telling me all this, James? Because I want to earn back your respect, he said simply. Not because you're wealthy, but because you're the same amazing woman who helped me grade papers until midnight and made soup when I was sick. I was too weak to deserve you before. I want to become someone who does. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Patricia. Your mother's at the apartment building, I told James. She's demanding to speak with me. You don't have to go, he said quickly. Actually, I think I do. I found Patricia in the basement apartment where she now lived. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Her designer clothes looked out of place against the concrete walls. Hello, Patricia. She turned, and I was struck by how different she looked. The carefully maintained facade had cracked, showing the insecure woman beneath. Emma, she said, then stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Finally, she whispered, I understand now. Understand what? What it feels like, to be judged by where you live, to have people look down on you. Her hands trembled. Yesterday, I couldn't get a restaurant reservation because of my new address. Me, I've been going there for 20 years. Feels awful, doesn't it? She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I've been horrible, not just to you, but to so many people. Living here, being treated the way I treated others, it's opened my eyes. That was the point, I said quietly. She looked up sharply. You mean, this wasn't just revenge? Revenge would have been making you homeless. This was about education. Patricia sank onto the small sofa. I've lost everything. My home, my social standing, my son. You haven't lost James, I corrected. He's choosing to be his own man for the first time. Whether you lose him permanently depends on whether you can accept that change. And you? She asked hesitantly. Have I lost you as a daughter-in-law? I studied her carefully. That depends on you too, Patricia. Real change takes more than a few weeks of humility. Will you help me? She asked softly. I don't mean financially. I mean help me learn to be better. It was the first time I'd ever heard genuine vulnerability in her voice. 6 months later, I hosted a dinner party. Patricia was there, wearing a simple dress rather than her usual designer labels. She helped in the kitchen not because anyone asked her to, but because she wanted to. Amanda came too, having recently started volunteering at a women's shelter, a requirement I'd added to release when she asked to rent one of my properties. James and I were still working on our marriage, taking things day by day. He'd proven his commitment to change not through grand gestures, but through consistent actions and unwavering support. As we sat down to dinner, I looked around the table. My parents were there. My father deep in conversation with James about the financial literacy program, which had expanded to 3 more community centers. My mother and Patricia were exchanging recipes, Their previous class barriers dissolved. "Emma," Patricia said during dessert, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For teaching me that true worth isn't about where you live or what you own. It's about how you treat people." She smiled sadly. "I just wish I'd learned that lesson sooner." Later that night, as James and I stood on our balcony overlooking the neighborhood, he asked, "Do you regret any of it?" I thought about the past year, the pain, the growth, the transformations. "No," I said finally. "Sometimes people need to lose everything to understand what really matters." He took my hand, and we stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. The basement apartment where Patricia lived was visible from our vantage point, its lights glowing warmly in the darkness. It stood as a reminder that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to become better than they were. My phone buzzed. A message from my investment team about another successful algorithm deployment. But for once, I didn't check it immediately. Some things were more valuable than money, and I was finally surrounded by people who understood that truth.
Well, well, it appears that our less educated daughter-in-law, the unremarkable plain Jane, is about to grace us with her singing. "Come on, step onto the stage, you ugly duckling," my mother-in-law sneered. It was my sister-in-law's wedding reception, and I was coerced into performing a solo, as was customary whenever my mother-in-law found an opportunity to belittle me. Her audacity to humiliate me, even on such a joyous occasion as my sister-in-law's wedding, was beyond my comprehension. "What's taking so long? Hurry up." She seemed impatient. Her voice hardened. "Okay then, I will. Excuse me." I stood up from my seat and slowly made my way towards the stage. "I'm Erica, 33 years old, living with my 4-year-old daughter Janice and my husband Paul, who's the same age as me. We're in our 8th year of marriage. Orphaned as a child, I was raised by my grandparents but chose to be independent, dropping out of high school to work at a local factory. Paul and I reconnected at a high school reunion when we were 21, hit it off, and started dating. 3 years after Paul graduated from university, we got married. Since then, I've been supporting him, managing our household chores, and raising our daughter while working part-time. "Mom, teach me how to sing," Janice has been asking me recently. Neither Paul nor I had any intention of forcing music onto her, but I have a background in music, having been the president of the choir club in high school. I still love singing and even take voice training lessons as a hobby. Janice developed an interest in music naturally, and I hope that one day we can perform together with Paul's music. Returning home 3 days later, my mother-in-law called, resuming her habit of belittling me since she discovered I dropped out of high school. She often showered me with insults, criticizing my abilities and family background. She wasn't my favorite person. "Hello, is Janice there right now?" my mother-in-law asked. "I'm sorry, she's at voice training right now." "She's not home," I replied, realizing I had let something slip, but it was too late. "Why didn't you tell me before letting her attend such things? You really don't think things through." "I'll teach her," my mother-in-law insisted. Despite her accomplished musical background, she tended to take a condescending tone when it came to music and education. She doted on our daughter but might inadvertently push her away if she followed the same strict teaching approach she used on Paul and his sister in the past. "Mother-in-law, I appreciate your offer, but I want Janice to have her freedom in this. Even if you say that, it's really up to Janice whether she wants to continue or not. I can't force her to quit. I'm sure it would be much better if I taught her." My mother-in-law abruptly ended the call. 3 months passed, and I'd almost forgotten about the incident when my mother-in-law decided to visit our home. "It's been a while, hasn't it? Oh, how's Janice been doing?" she inquired, likely happy to see her granddaughter after such a long time. As soon as she stepped into our home, she immediately scooped Janice into her arms, barely greeting us. It just so happened that Janice had the day off from her voice training class, and the whole family was at home. "Granny, I've become good at singing," Janice exclaimed, boasting to her grandmother. "Really? Could you sing something for me then?" my mother-in-law asked. I intervened, worried about what my mother-in-law might say to Janice. How about we eat first before we hear her sing? It's lunchtime after all, I suggested. Don't interrupt when she's about to sing for me. My mother-in-law dismissed my suggestion. I'm sorry, Janice dear. Can you sing for me? My mother-in-law asked. Hearing her request, Janice began to sing. From the perspective of a mother-in-law who graduated as the valedictorian of a music conservatory, my daughter's singing must have sounded rather clumsy. I had a sinking feeling inside me, worried that my daughter might receive some snide remarks from her. However, my mother-in-law applauded and praised my daughter, saying, "You did well. You've practiced a lot." Far from making any sarcastic comments, she thanked her grandmother, seeming happy to be praised. I sighed in relief, thinking that even my strict mother-in-law wouldn't make snide remarks to her granddaughter. I thought Mom might say something. I was a little worried. Paul whispered to me with a look of relief on his face. Nothing particular happened after that, but as the evening came, I realized that Janice had fallen asleep. "Excuse me, mother-in-law. Since Janice fell asleep, I'm going to take her to her room," I announced, picking up Janice and carrying her to her bedroom. After putting my daughter to bed, I returned to the living room. As soon as I re-entered, my mother-in-law said to me, "Didn't you think that Janice's singing today was terrible, Erica? It's a waste of money to let her go to a class that can only teach her to that level. I'll teach her myself." I confronted Paul as anger welled up within me. Wait a minute, isn't that a bit too selfish? What can we do when it comes to music? She's much better than me, and it's a fact that I got better by being taught by her, Paul reasoned. About 5 minutes of silence followed, and it was Paul who gave in and said, "All right, Mom, go ahead and teach Janice to sing for a while." Hearing those unbelievable words from Paul's mouth, my mind went blank. Is this some kind of joke? Won't they care how Janice feels? After all, she has been so happy to be interested in music. What if Janice hates music because she's taught so strictly by her grandmother? I was so angry that I felt like waking up Janice right at that moment and leaving the house with her. So I guess it means Janice is quitting the voice training class, as I said, right? My mother-in-law, with a triumphant look on her face, asked Paul and me. All right, but remember, this is not a music conservatory, so please absolutely do not do anything that Janice would dislike. I know that you know I'm not uneducated like you, I retorted, stating what I had to say, knowing she'd never back off, and I let her go home for the day. That night, my husband apologized for his mother's behavior, but I did not even want to see his face. I ignored him and went to bed. The next morning, I told my daughter Janice, "From today, instead of going to the voice training class, let's have Grandma teach you to sing here at home, all right?" When she heard it, she looked very sad but said nothing and just nodded. I apologized, seeing her like that. Then, come noon, my mother-in-law arrived at our home. "Janice, starting today, Grandma is going to teach you to sing even better," she said to my daughter with a smile. No sooner had the lesson started than my mother-in-law's teaching style became more and more strict. Within an hour, she criticized Janice harshly, demanding perfection. "You're wrong. You're making the same mistake in the same place. Do it again." I knew it would turn out like this. "Mother-in-law, this isn't what we agreed to, is it? Could you be a bit gentler?" "What are you talking about? I'm being gentle. Don't interfere. Why don't you quietly do some housework that you can hardly handle?" 4 hours passed, and at last, my mother-in-law's lesson ended. "Well, see you tomorrow. Remember to practice what we did today," she left, seemingly pleased with herself. If I'm going to get yelled at this much, I don't want to sing anymore, seated in her chair, Janice said to me. I harbored an intense hatred for my mother-in-law, taking away what my daughter enjoyed and only caring about her own satisfaction. This cannot go on. I won't let my mother-in-law have her way. Her singing lessons continued in the days that followed. However, after about a week, Janice told me, "I don't want Grandma to teach me anymore. I don't want to sing." Given my mother-in-law's way of teaching, I thought it couldn't be helped. You don't have to force yourself. If you want to quit, that's okay too. So you don't want to go back to the voice training class? It was something she had started because she wanted to, and I, for my part, wanted her to continue. So I asked her that. If it's that class, it seemed that Janice hadn't come to hate singing itself. It appeared that the harsh words from her grandmother and the lack of praise, even when she felt she did well, were making it unenjoyable for her. Why don't you go back to your voice training lessons and give it another shot? I asked Janice, and as if she hadn't been upset moments before, she perked up and nodded enthusiastically. So I'm sorry to say this to you, grandmother, but from tomorrow, Janice will be returning to her original voice training classes. The next day arrived. I relayed Janice's feelings to her grandmother over the phone. How can she whine about giving up after just a week? Isn't it your fault for raising such a weak-minded child? My mother-in-law exclaimed. I retorted, well, it might be, but even though you graduated top of your class from a prestigious music college, it seems that's the only way you know how to teach. Janice told me that she preferred her voice training teacher. Fussing and fuming, my mother-in-law continued, but I ignored her and hung up. Whether she was top of her class or not, it was quite satisfying that her own teaching method had led to her being disliked by her granddaughter, who preferred her voice training teacher. After that, the visits from the grandmother ceased. I've spoken to your mother and told her it was okay if she didn't come to teach anymore. Janice said she didn't want it anymore either. I also feel like I've done something unforgivable to Janice. Back in the day, my mother was very strict with me about music, so I couldn't say anything. But I thought she wouldn't be so harsh on her granddaughter. I'm really sorry. I confessed to my husband Paul that night. When I relayed this to him, he seemed deeply regretful and apologized. I was so angry when Paul suggested quitting Janice's voice training class and having the grandmother teach her. I almost felt like punching him, but fortunately, Janice didn't come to hate music, so I decided to forgive him. 2 weeks later, Paul said, my sister is getting married in a month, and she asks us to perform. I had never performed at someone else's wedding before. What kind of performance is she expecting? I was planning to bring a few people from my band and do a small concert, but my sister really wants you and my mother to sing as well. Hearing that the grandmother would also be performing, I reluctantly accepted Paul's suggestion. So, does that mean I'll be singing with your mother? Well, yeah, that's how it seems. Singing with my mother-in-law of all people, I wondered if it would be all right. But if I happened to sing better than her at this performance, I wondered what she'll say. I started practicing the very next day, but there was no sign of my mother-in-law practicing at all. Mother, aren't you going to practice? I'm fine. I'm much better than you, even without practicing. After all, practice is something that people like you, who are not very good, need to do. I tried asking because I was curious, but the only response from my mother-in-law was sarcasm. I decided it was a waste of time to engage with her and focused on my own preparations. After we decided what song to perform, I also increased the frequency of my voice training lessons. I was sick of being ridiculed by my mother-in-law, and above all, I was anxious about performing in public after such a long time without proper training. On the day of my sister-in-law's wedding, the ceremony went smoothly, and the time for the entertainment had finally come. First, my husband Paul took the stage and began to play his music. As expected, given he plays regularly, he was confident and exuded an elegant aura. I was utterly mesmerized by Paul's performance. I'm not feeling well today. Could you sing on your own? Then, out of the blue, my mother-in-law told me to sing solo. What? That's so sudden. It's not fair. Well, there's nothing we can do about it. Or what? Are you too embarrassed to sing in front of others because you're uneducated and ugly? She said this without a hint of remorse. Okay, I know it. She's doing this on purpose. I thought and decided to retort. Being uneducated and ugly. I've practiced hard, so I won't be embarrassed singing in front of others. I asked you several times if you needed to practice, but you showed no signs of doing so. Could it be that you're actually a terrible singer? That's not true. My mother-in-law raised her voice in response to my question. The people around us began to stir, wondering what was going on. "Ah, sorry. It's nothing." I got up from my seat, apologized to those around me, and then pressed my mother-in-law further. "Graduating as valedictorian from the music college. You sure talk big about teaching others, huh? Are you running away because you're embarrassed to sing with me since I'm better?" I whispered this in her ear. "What did you say? There's no way that's true. If I sing with a low-educated, ugly person like you, it would only throw me off. Didn't your parents teach you that you and your parents are truly incompetent?" She disparaged me as being uneducated and ugly and even insulted my parents in front of everyone. Embarrassed and angry, I wanted to leave right at that moment, but if I ran away now, it would just make her happy. "What are you doing just sitting there? Hurry up and go." "Okay then, I will." "Excuse me." Just as Paul's performance ended, I took his place on stage. I was supposed to sing with my mother-in-law, but due to her not feeling well, I would be singing solo. Instead of the song I was supposed to sing with her, I chose an opera song I used to sing a lot when I was competitive, an aria from The Marriage of Figaro. And so I began to sing. At that moment, perhaps due to the vocal training I had done, my condition was excellent, and I was able to produce the most beautiful vibrato I'd ever achieved. It was amazing. The audience was mesmerized by my singing, saying things like, "Wow, her voice is incredible," and "Is she a professional?" When I finished singing my song without any hitches, the audience gave me a standing ovation, showering me with thunderous applause. "Congrats on your wedding, sister-in-law." You know, I used to be the choir leader in high school. It's been a few years since I last sang in front of an audience, so I was a bit nervous. How did I do? Thanks so much for listening. After making this statement, I returned to my seat, and my daughter, all starry-eyed, pleaded, "Mom, your voice was so beautiful. Can you teach me next time?" Witnessing this, my mother-in-law, with her jealousy on full display, said in a huff, Anyone can sing like that. Don't get ahead of yourself," continuing to belittle my singing. Just as I thought the entertainment segment was over, my sister-in-law unexpectedly said, "Mother-in-law, and you should sing too." Words that I didn't expect came out from my sister-in-law. My mother-in-law was taken aback and looked at her daughter in confusion, asking me, "I've never heard you sing, Mom, and since you taught me so much about music when I was young, I'd really love to hear you sing," my sister-in-law expressed with pure honesty. The attendees chimed in, "Mother-in-law, you should definitely sing." Words had gotten around that my mother-in-law was a top graduate from a prestigious music school, and the crowd grew increasingly excited for her performance, creating an atmosphere where she felt she had to sing. "Well, with all this, I guess you have to sing now, don't you?" I did not hesitate to add, "So, all right, all right." "If you insist," she responded, heading to the stage. The moment my mother-in-law took the stage, the energy in the room peaked. But as she began to sing, such murmurs could be heard throughout the crowd. "Wait, no way. I might even be a better singer." She must have heard them as well. My mother-in-law's voice did seem off, but even accounting for that, her singing was dreadful. She always criticized others for their singing, but her pitch was all over the place. Honestly, I felt I was still a better singer. The atmosphere grew awkward as her performance ended. Unlike when I sang, the venue was filled with a cold atmosphere, and the applause was sparse. Everyone acted as if they'd seen something they shouldn't have, as if her turn had never happened. Upon returning to our table, my mother-in-law, her face flushed red, shouted at me, "That's why I didn't want to sing. If you had sung properly, my daughter wouldn't have asked me to do this," she said to me with such an angry tone. But I didn't understand why my sister-in-law asked her mother to sing. It seemed to me that she genuinely wanted the wedding to be blessed by the voice of her mother, who had been sternly teaching her about music since her childhood. Do you think so? To me, it seems she genuinely wanted you to sing. I shared my honest thoughts with my mother-in-law. No way. I'm sure she knew I'm bad at singing, and this is her way of embarrassing me. I was utterly astonished at her response. She had always criticized others' music and performances, yet she herself didn't want to sing in public because she's bad at it. She never hesitates to complain about others' music, but she is like, I don't accept complaints, although I'm a bad singer myself. Such a self-centered attitude won't be accepted. My daughter Janice might have her newfound love for music crushed by her grandmother. I could no longer bear my mother-in-law's attitude. So, a person who studied at a prestigious music school and criticizes others' music is just doing so because she can only sing this badly. But mother-in-law, isn't it great? You are able to sing alone without having to sing with a terrible singer like me. I responded to my mother-in-law with a sarcastic tone. How dare you say that? It's your fault that I had to embarrass myself. It's not nice to say that in front of your daughter. I'm sure she's satisfied hearing her mother singing. As I spoke these words, my mother-in-law fell silent. There was a stir amongst those who'd heard what I had said to my mother-in-law. But other than that, the ceremony went on smoothly and ended without any problems. 2 days after the ceremony, my mother-in-law stormed into our house. I just can't let it go. I want you to apologize for what had happened. I was surprised by her sudden visit, but retorted, what exactly am I supposed to apologize for? I wasn't aware that your singing was that bad. Instead, I think you owe us an apology. What do you mean? I have absolutely nothing to apologize for. It's your fault I was forced to sing that song I hated and embarrass myself. No, not to me, to Janice, because of you. Janice almost came to hate the music that she had started to enjoy. Even though you graduated from a prestigious music school, why would you torment a child who has developed an interest in music just because things didn't go your way? Is that what you learned from your music school? I haven't received any musical training from you, yet I was able to sing at the reception and even received applause. How about you, mother-in-law? Shall I give you some singing lessons? I'll teach you thoroughly. My mother-in-law was speechless hearing what I said. If you have nothing else to discuss, please leave. I won't tolerate you interfering with our daughter or my husband's music anymore. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law left our home without another word. Her shoulders slumped into defeat. I felt a sense of satisfaction from being able to retaliate so fiercely in her area of expertise, music. It was indeed worth continuing my voice training since my youth. Without the voice training, I might not have been able to receive such applause at my sister-in-law's wedding reception. I wonder how my mother-in-law, who has always boasted about graduating top of her class from a prestigious music school, felt being scolded this way by someone like me who only has a high school diploma and was just a choir member. To be honest, I felt a sense of poetic justice towards my mother-in-law. I thought, serves her right. She shouldn't act so haughty anymore. It's been a month since the wedding ceremony of my sister-in-law, and now my mother-in-law occasionally visits our house, but she doesn't complain about my daughter's singing anymore. I actually didn't mind my mother-in-law visiting since she did not say anything about music anymore. My daughter Janice, who has improved a lot in her singing recently, is challenging a slightly difficult song given as an assignment in her class. Mom, this song is hard, but I'll try to sing it beautifully, she declared, practicing enthusiastically. That's great. You do your best. You'll definitely do well. Although I love singing, don't know much about the technical aspects, so I had no idea what was difficult about the song. But seeing my daughter working so hard, that's all I could say. On that day, my mother-in-law, who happened to be visiting our house, observed the interaction between me and Janice and said, Erica, this song is not something you can handle by just doing your best. Janice, listen well. You should do it like this. It was incredibly kind and patient of her, which was unimaginable given how she used to be, to explain until Janice understood. Oh, thank you, Grandma. It's easier to sing now, Janice said as she listened intently to her grandmother's advice, working hard to master her assignment. Erica, I used to look down on everyone doing music without graduating from a music college. But after meeting someone like you who can sing so beautifully without a music degree, I changed my mind. After all, we should enjoy music. Could you teach me to sing next time? My mother-in-law said that looking at Janice singing. I was surprised to hear such a thing all of a sudden, but I'm sure the sarcastic comment I made after my sister-in-law's wedding had its effect. My lessons are tough, you know. I grant this, I replied to my mother-in-law. Oh, I won't do anything horrible anymore. I feel sorry for Paul too, although it's too late now. But if you're going to be tough, Erica, I'm prepared. After hearing that from my mother-in-law, I felt assured that she won't say anything about her music anymore. Although a lot had happened, the tension between my mother-in-law and me eased off, and since then, we've often gone to karaoke together, becoming close enough to sing together. I hope that one day when Janice becomes even better at singing, the four of us, me, Paul, Janice, and my mother-in-law, can have a fun jam session.
The day my grandmother died, I inherited two things, her fortune and her wisdom. Sometimes, she had written in her final letter, "People show their truest selves only when they think you have nothing." I was 23 when I received that letter, along with documents detailing my inheritance, $50 million in diversified investments, real estate holdings across 3 continents, and controlling shares in several major corporations. My grandmother, Eleanor Wright, had built an empire from nothing, but she'd done it quietly. The world knew the businesses, but few knew the woman behind them. My parents never understood her. To them, Eleanor was just the frustratingly frugal mother-in-law who refused to fund their lavish lifestyle. They didn't know she was actually one of the wealthiest women in Chicago. That was exactly how she wanted it. Sophia, my mother's voice cut through my thoughts as I sat at our dining room table, still holding the letter. Did that grandmother of yours leave us anything useful, or was it just another collection of her precious books? I looked up at Diana Maxwell, the woman who had spent the last 20 years trying to mold me into her version of the perfect daughter and failing miserably. She stood in our kitchen doorway, immaculately dressed as always, disappointment etched into every line of her face. "Just books," I lied smoothly, tucking the letter away. "And some old photographs." She sighed dramatically. Typical. That woman never understood the importance of maintaining proper social standing. Do you know what the Hendersons would say if they could see our 10-year-old car? I did know. I'd heard about the Hendersons, the Blackwells, and every other family my mother desperately tried to impress for the past 2 decades. Their opinions mattered more to her than oxygen. "I'm sure they're too busy with their own lives to care about our car, Mom." "That's exactly the kind of attitude that worries me," she snapped. "You're just like her. No understanding of how the world really works. Thank God Alexander has more sense." Ah, yes, Alexander. My younger brother, the golden child. Even now, at 20, he had never worked a day in his life. Why should he? Mom and Dad funded his every whim, from his failed startup ventures to his collection of luxury watches. Speaking of Alexander, my mother continued, brightening considerably, "He's just been accepted into Harvard Business School. Your father and I are throwing a celebration dinner tonight. All the right people will be there. Wear something appropriate." Her eyes swept critically over my simple dress and minimal jewelry. I nodded, not mentioning that I'd graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern's business school last year. There had been no party for that. Instead, my parents had spent that weekend at Alexander's amateur golf tournament. Later that evening, I sat in my small apartment above the bookstore where I supposedly worked, reviewing my grandmother's documents. The bookstore job was actually a front. I owned the building and 3 others on the block through one of my grandmother's holding companies. But as far as my family knew, I was just a struggling bookkeeper living paycheck to paycheck. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Don't be late tonight. The Blackwells are bringing their son James. Wear the blue dress your mother bought you." James Blackwell. Of course. They were still trying to orchestrate that match, seeing him as my ticket to proper society. If they only knew that I could buy the Blackwells company 3 times over. I arrived at my parents' house precisely on time, wearing a simple black dress instead of the gaudy blue one my mother preferred. The valet? Yes, they had hired a valet for the evening. Gave me a sympathetic look as I handed him the keys to my modest Honda Civic. Inside, the house was transformed. Crystal champagne flutes caught the light from the grand chandelier, elegant flower arrangements adorned every surface, and the air was thick with expensive perfume and pretension. "Sophia," my mother's voice carried across the foyer, tight with barely concealed irritation. "I thought I told you to wear the blue dress." "This one was clean," I replied simply. She closed her eyes briefly, gathering patience. "At least try to make a good impression on James. His family's company is very successful." I bit back a smile, remembering the report on my desk about Blackwell Industries' recent financial troubles. Their success was mostly smoke and mirrors at this point. Alexander chose that moment to make his entrance, drawing every eye in the room. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo that probably cost more than my supposed monthly salary. "There's my boy," our father boomed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Harvard Business School's newest star." I watched as person after person congratulated him, praising his natural business acumen and brilliant mind. None of them seemed to remember his 3 failed businesses, all funded by our parents' increasingly strained resources. James Blackwell sidled up to me, champagne in hand. "Sophia," he smiled, all white teeth and practiced charm. "Still working at that little bookstore?" "Someone has to pay the bills," I said mildly. He laughed as if I'd told a particularly amusing joke. "You know, my family's company always has positions available for motivated individuals. I'll keep that in mind." The evening continued in this vein, a parade of wealth and subtle condescension. I watched my parents fawn over Alexander, making endless excuses for his past failures while pointing to his imagined future successes. But beneath the sparkle and shine, I could see the cracks. The way my father's hand shook slightly as he signed the catering bill. The tight look around my mother's eyes when someone mentioned their recent vacation. Actually a desperate business trip to save a failing investment. They were in trouble, though they'd die before admitting it. Years of funding Alexander's expensive education, failed ventures, and extravagant lifestyle had taken their toll. The mansion they were so proud of, the one they'd remortgaged 3 times to maintain appearances, was slowly slipping through their fingers. What they didn't know was that I'd been watching, waiting, and quietly buying up their debt through various shell companies. Every desperate loan, every refinanced mortgage, I owned them all. As I drove home that night in my sensible Honda, I thought about my grandmother's words. People do show their truest selves when they think you have nothing. And soon, very soon, my family was going to show exactly who they really were. The signs of my parents' financial collapse became impossible to ignore, even for them. It started with small things. The household staff was temporarily reduced. Their country club membership became inactive. And suddenly my mother discovered a passion for vintage fashion. But Alexander's lifestyle never changed. Even as the family finances crumbled, my parents continued funding his every whim. The day I saw him drive past my bookstore in a brand new Porsche, I knew they had finally hit rock bottom. I was in my real office, not the cramped bookstore back room where I pretended to work, but my actual office on the 47th floor of downtown Chicago's most prestigious building. As CEO of Wright Investments, I had a perfect view of the city my grandmother had helped build. "Miss Wright," my assistant Sarah buzzed in. "Your brother just made another withdrawal from your parents' emergency fund." I pulled up the banking records on my screen. There it was, $175,000 transferred to a luxury car dealership. Money they definitely didn't have. "How much do they have left?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Less than $50,000, Mom. And their mortgage payment is due next week." I leaned back in my chair, thinking about the careful web I'd woven over the past year. Through various holding companies, I owned not just their mortgage, but all their outstanding debt. Every credit card, every loan, every desperate attempt to maintain their facade of wealth. I controlled it all. "Schedule the foreclosure notices," I instructed Sarah. "It's time." The next morning, I arrived at the bookstore early, knowing what was coming. Right on schedule, my mother burst through the door, her designer handbag genuine but last season. "Sophia!" Her voice was shrill with panic. "Something terrible has happened. The bank. They're saying they're going to foreclose on the house." I looked up from the ledger I was pretending to review. "What? How is that possible?" "Your father. There have been some business setbacks, but it's just temporary. We just need a little help." She reached across the counter, gripping my hand. "Darling, how much do you have saved?" I almost laughed. After years of mocking my little bookstore job, she was now eyeing my supposed savings like a lifeline. "Mom, I make $35,000 a year. After rent and bills, I'd barely save anything." Her face fell. "But surely you must have something. An emergency fund?" "I have about $3,000 saved." I lied. "But that's everything." "We need it," she said immediately. "Just until your father's deals come through. Alexander has some very promising ventures in the works." I sat back, studying her. "What about Alexander's new Porsche? Couldn't he sell that?" "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "He needs to maintain appearances. How else will he attract the right kind of investors? And my appearance doesn't matter." "That's different. She waved her hand vaguely. "You're just not in those circles anyway." In those circles, I thought about the charity gala I'd be hosting next month as Eleanor Wright's heir, where half of Chicago's elite would be in attendance. But my mother didn't know about that. "I'm sorry, Mom. I can't empty my savings account. I need to pay rent." She stood up, anger replacing desperation. "How can you be so selfish? After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me?" The question hung in the air between us. For a moment, confusion crossed her face, as if she were genuinely trying to remember any significant thing they'd done to help me succeed. We gave you a good home, an education." "The education I paid for with student loans, you mean? The same loans you refused to help with because you were funding Alexander's third startup. That's not fair. Alexander has vision. He just needs support too." "Get out." My voice was quiet but firm. "Excuse me." "Get out of my store, Mom, and don't ask me for money again." She left in a fury of slammed doors and threats, but I wasn't worried. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. That evening, I received another call, this time from my father. "Sophia, we need to discuss this situation like adults," he began, his business negotiation voice in full effect. "Your mother tells me you were quite unhelpful today." I can't give you my savings, Dad. Now listen here, young lady. This family has a reputation to maintain. We can't have the house foreclosed. Do you have any idea what that would do to our standing? To Alexander's prospects? I thought about the foreclosure notices being prepared in my lawyer's office at that very moment. Maybe Alexander could help? He just bought a new Porsche. He must have money. That's different. That was an investment in his future. He needs to project success to be successful. And what about my future? He sighed heavily. Sophia, let's be realistic. You work in a bookstore. Your future is, well, it's already set, isn't it? But Alexander has real potential. The words stung, even though I'd heard variations of them my entire life. I'm sorry, Dad. I can't help. Then you're no daughter of mine. The line went dead. I sat in my luxurious office, looking out over the city lights, and smiled. Soon they would learn exactly what kind of daughter I was. The bankruptcy hearing was scheduled for 9:00 a.m. on a crisp October morning. I arrived early, watching from my car as my family pulled up in Alexander's Porsche, apparently the only vehicle they had left. My mother's designer outfit was pristine, but last season. My father's suit looked tired, and even Alexander's usual smirk seemed strained. They hadn't seen me yet, didn't know I was here. As far as they knew, their wayward daughter was still counting pennies at her bookstore. I waited until they entered the courthouse before following. Inside my briefcase were documents that would change everything: proof of ownership, transfer records, and the truth about who really controlled their fate. The bankruptcy courtroom was already filling up. Chicago's elite had come to witness the fall of the Maxwell family. My parents sat in the front row, heads held high despite their circumstances. Alexander slouched beside them, tapping on his phone. "All rise," the bailiff called as Judge Marion Wheeler entered. She was known for her no-nonsense approach to bankruptcy cases, particularly those involving what she called self-inflicted financial wounds. Case number 2847. Maxwell Family Bankruptcy Petition, she announced, reviewing the papers before her. "I see the creditor's representative is present." This was my cue. I stood up from my seat in the back, straightening my channel suit. Not that my family would recognize it as such. They'd never seen me wear anything but off-the-rack clothing. "Yes, Your Honor." Sophia Wright, representing Wright Investments. The reaction was immediate. My mother's perfectly maintained facade cracked as she whirled around. My father's face went pale, and Alexander actually dropped his phone. "Sophia." My mother's voice was barely a whisper. I walked to the front of the courtroom, placing my briefcase on the creditor's table. "Good morning, Mother. Father. Alexander." "What is the meaning of this?" my father demanded, starting to rise before his lawyer pulled him back down. Judge Wheeler banged her gavel. "Mr. Maxwell, you will maintain order in my courtroom. Ms. Wright, please proceed." "Your Honor, Wright Investments holds all outstanding debts of the Maxwell family, including their primary residence mortgage, personal loans, and credit accounts. The total sum is approximately $12.7 million. "That's impossible," Alexander blurted out. "Sophia works in a bookstore." I smiled. "Actually, I own the bookstore, along with the building it's in, and most of the block. I'm the CEO of Wright Investments, formerly known as Eleanor Wright Enterprises." The courtroom erupted in whispers. My grandmother had been a legend in Chicago business circles, though few had known her face. "Order," Judge Wheeler commanded. "Ms. Wright, continue." 3 years ago, I inherited my grandmother's entire estate, valued at approximately $50 million. During that time, I watched as my parents repeatedly refinanced their home to fund my brother's failed ventures and maintain their lifestyle. Through various holding companies, I purchased all their debt. My mother was openly crying now, her carefully applied makeup running. My father sat frozen, perhaps finally understanding the magnitude of their situation. However, I continued, "I'm not here to demand immediate repayment. I have a proposal." I withdrew a document from my briefcase. "I'm willing to restructure all outstanding debts under the following conditions. First, Alexander's spending privileges will be completely cut off. He'll need to find actual employment, not another startup opportunity." Alexander jumped up. "You can't do this. I'm your brother." "Sit down, Mr. Maxwell," Judge Wheeler ordered. "Continue, Ms. Wright." "Second, my parents will undergo financial counseling and maintain strict budget oversight. Third, they will sell the mansion and move into a more modest home, which I have already purchased for them." "This is ridiculous." My father finally found his voice. "You're our daughter. You can't treat us this way." I turned to face them fully for the first time. "Can't I? For 20 years, you treated me like I was nothing. You mocked my job, dismissed my achievements, and poured every resource into Alexander, while leaving me to fend for myself. When you needed help, you demanded my savings, all $3,000 you thought I had, without a second thought. We gave you everything," my mother protested. "No, Mother. You gave Alexander everything. I built this myself. Or rather, Grandmother helped me build it. She taught me that true character shows when people think you have nothing, and you've shown yours very clearly." Judge Wheeler reviewed the proposed agreement. The terms seemed fair, considerably more generous than standard bankruptcy proceedings. "Do the Maxwells wish to accept?" My father's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. They really had no choice. It was this or lose everything. "We accept," my father ground out. "Excellent," I said, retrieving more documents. "Here are the keys to your new house. It's a lovely 3-bedroom in Lincoln Park. The moving company will arrive tomorrow." "Oh, and Alexander?" I turned to my brother. "The dealership has been instructed to repossess the Porsche. I've arranged for a used Toyota to be delivered instead." The next hour was a blur of signatures and legal proceedings. My parents barely looked at me, their shame and anger palpable. Alexander stormed out as soon as he could, probably to move money. I'd already frozen. As I left the courthouse, I heard quick footsteps behind me. "Why?" My mother's voice was small. "Why did you let us fall so far before revealing the truth?" I turned to face her. "Because you needed to learn. Money isn't what makes a person valuable, Mother. Neither are appearances or social standing. I wanted you to understand what it feels like to be judged for your bank account rather than your character. And now, will you ever forgive us?" "That depends on you. The house I bought you is nice. Not luxurious, but comfortable. Your new budget is reasonable. Not extravagant, but adequate. What you do with this second chance is up to you." I walked to my car, not the Honda Civic they were familiar with, but a sleek Mercedes I'd kept hidden until now. "Oh, and Mother," I called back. "That blue dress you wanted me to wear to Alexander's party, I bought the company that makes it last year. They've discontinued that particular style. It was hideous." The look on her face was worth every second of the past 3 years. 3 months later, I sat in my office reviewing reports. My parents had actually stuck to their budget, attending financial counseling without complaint. Alexander had finally taken a real job, entry level, of course, and was learning what actual work felt like. On my desk sat a new photo frame containing an old picture of my grandmother and me in front of her favorite bookstore, the same one I now owned. Her words from that final letter still rang true. Sometimes people show their truest selves only when they think you have nothing. But she had taught me something else too. Sometimes the greatest power lies not in wealth itself, but in choosing when to reveal it.
Unlock this door. Have you lost your mind? They're probably saying that on the other side of this thick door, but I can't hear them, and frankly, I don't need their forgiveness. Facing the three flustered fools on the other side, I waved with a smile and said, "Let's go. Wonder if you can make it back safely. Good luck." My name is Leah, a 30-year-old officer worker. I'm a newlywed, married for just a year with no kids yet. Back when I was single, my hobby was taking day trips using the train on my days off. Friends would ask, "Don't you get lonely traveling alone?" But I found it surprisingly pleasant to move at my own pace without a fixed schedule. There's a bit of loneliness, but the fun outweighs it. I have a favorite travel magazine, and sometimes I plan trips based on it. As I went about my days, I noticed something. Hug, isn't that the same guy I saw last week? It seemed coincidental, but after the third time, I might have thought it was fate if I were romantic. Instead, I just felt a bit scared, but it turned out he felt the same. Sorry if I'm mistaken, but didn't we meet last week and the week before at completely different places? He approached me with a slightly scared look. Wait, do you think I'm following you? To clear up the misunderstanding, I opened my travel magazine and confidently said, "I'm just traveling based on this magazine." Surprised, he responded, "Me too," and opened the same magazine, smiling happily. That's how I met my husband, Henry. He turned out to be a really interesting guy. Being cautious by nature, I always end up carrying a lot of stuff, but he said, "I always travel light so I can move easily. Nowadays, with cashless payments, you hardly need cash. A mobile phone is enough." He laughed joyfully. Talking with someone with such different values was very stimulating. We hit it off, discussing our favorite travel destinations and exchanged contacts. Though we both liked solo trips, we started going out together more often. Surprisingly, I enjoyed sharing memories with someone else, and I found that local food tastes even better when shared. One day, after about 6 months, Henry asked me to go out. I didn't feel bad at all. In fact, I felt the same way and remember being very happy. We decided to get married 6 months into our relationship. I thought our happy newlywed life was just beginning, but my expectations quickly shattered due to Henry's parents, Jack and Aaliyah. Their house is about a 30-minute drive from ours. They are still in their 50s, with Aaliyah working part-time, and both of them are employed. Initially, they used to visit our house, but lately, we've managed to maintain a reasonable distance. However, an incident occurred that disrupted this balance. "Hey, Henry, let's go here on our next day off." I agree, sounds good. Our post-marriage tradition of many trips to tourist spots continued as usual. Minimalist Henry recently reduced his belongings to just a mobile phone, even entrusting his wallet to me. It feels so light. I don't look like someone who's about to go out at all, do I? He said with a contented smile. I thought to myself, at least carry your own wallet. But it wasn't really a bother. It was an ordinary conversation, but that day was different. Oh, by the way, Dad and Mom's wedding anniversary is coming up soon. How about we invite my parents on our next trip? Henry's sudden suggestion made me tense up. Of course, there was a reason for that, but I couldn't just say no. So I responded, yeah, that sounds good. We haven't seen Aaliyah and Jack recently anyway. Unaware of my slightly strained face, Henry didn't notice a thing. The next day, they were really looking forward to it. When I called, he told me, I guess I have to give it my best shot. So I steeled myself. Honestly, I'm not comfortable around my parents-in-law. They're not bad people, we're just not a good fit. I'm more on the reserved side, not fond of noisy places, and this applies to people too. Talking to high-energy people can be mentally exhausting for me. Speaking of my parents-in-law, they are incredibly cheerful. When I first met them, their exuberance overwhelmed me. "Nice to meet you. I'm Henry's mom, and I'm the dad," they announced loudly, like comedians, making me stiffen up involuntarily. That time, the four of us, including Henry and his parents, went out to eat, and they chose the restaurant. I wondered if it's their favorite place, but when we got there, it was an all-you-can-eat buffet. Meeting their son's girlfriend for the first time at such a casual place made me laugh. "We're so nervous today." "We haven't eaten anything since morning," Alia, who didn't seem nervous at all, said cheerfully to me. That's right. Plus, we have to get our money's worth." The true reason for skipping breakfast was quickly revealed by Jack. Their loud voices attracted quiet laughter from nearby tables. Embarrassed by then and wanting to go home, looking sideways, thinking Henry must feel the same, I was surprised to find he wasn't there. He had gone to get food. Not to be outdone, the parents-in-law also got up, piling their plates with food. Are they planning to hibernate after eating so much? Can I really become part of this family? I managed only a forced smile at their overwhelming presence. I barely ate that day, nervous as I was, feeling uncertain about the future with Henry. I was touched when they said at parting, "What a wonderful girlfriend Henry has. He may be awkward, but please take care of Henry from now on, Leia." I was simply happy to hear that. I loved him too, and I thought the parents-in-law weren't bad at heart. So, when he proposed a few months later, I faced no hesitation, but it turns out I'm not adept at judging people. At our wedding, the bridegroom's parents, my parents-in-law, completely disregarded the ceremony and focused solely on eating, leaving my own parents utterly disillusioned. Henry has a brother, Jonathan, who seemed to be the only sensible one. I'm sorry my parents showed such an embarrassing side. It's really shameful. Jonathan came to greet us politely. As I heard from my parents, Jonathan, who lives alone, seems to have a strained relationship with his parents. It appears the feeling is mutual, as they once complained. "That boy is always so noisy with his complaints." Just the other day, he bragged about buying several eggs when it was limited to one per person, and I scolded him for it. Seemingly annoyed, he replied, "Don't you feel guilty about benefiting yourself at the expense of others?" Hearing this story, I thought to myself, isn't that a fair point? What's wrong with that, Aliyah? I honestly felt that way when the parents-in-law came to visit our new home. They arrived empty-handed, which wasn't a problem. But then they started rummaging through our shelves, exclaiming, "Isn't this the snack they're advertising on TV? I've been wanting to try it. Oh, and this one too." They foraged through my hidden snacks like they were on a treasure hunt. Even though I bought those snacks, Henry, without any malice, said, "If you want them, take them home. That's fine, right, Leia?" I wanted to smack him right then and there. All I could do was respond with a forced smile. I had a suspicion, but it was clear now. The parents-in-law were moochers. "I want this. I want that. Give me, give me." In the early days of our marriage, they came over every week, sensing an opportunity, and I was almost driven to neurosis. Hey, don't you think there's something off about Aliyah and Jack? They're kind of annoying. My anger exploded, and I ended up fighting with Henry. Despite how angry I was, Henry looked puzzled and said, "No, not really. Is it that strange? They've been like that since I was a kid." "Don't worry about it," he said, patting my shoulder lightly, which made me furious. "Are you kidding me? If this keeps up, I'll divorce you. Just do whatever you want." My raised voice seemed to alarm Henry, and he quickly put an end to the parents-in-law's invasions. I don't know what Henry said to them, but since then, we've been living peacefully. However, the thought of traveling with the parents-in-law naturally made me anxious on the day of the trip. I was taken aback to see them waiting. "It's been a while, Lee. I heard you've been busy with work. Must be tough." Alia spoke to me, but I was far from calm. The reason lay in the appearance of the parents-in-law. Alia and Jack, where's your luggage? Looking closely, Alia and Jack had brought nothing with them, even for a day trip. Isn't it normal to bring at least a bag? We wanted to be ready to move quickly, and I have a sore shoulder. Their response echoed something I'd heard before, and it was baffling. The rest of the trip went as badly as I feared. It was soon revealed that the parents-in-law had forgotten their wallets. Feigning ignorance, they said, "That's strange, isn't it?" Watching them play dumb, I thought, maybe it's better to just call off this trip or even cancel it. Yeah, unfortunately, my feelings weren't understood, Henry, looking exasperated, said again, "My folks have always been like this. I'll cover for them, but make sure they pay me back." It seemed the trip would continue as the parents-in-law laughed and apologized. All I felt was disgust. Even after we arrived at our destination, the parents-in-law's rudeness didn't stop. They complained to the store staff. "Isn't there any free tasting? Wow, stingy, huh?" When I, feeling thirsty, bought a drink and hadn't even taken a sip yet, Alia said, "Can I have a sip of that? I'm thirsty too. I can't believe I forgot my wallet, huh?" While I forced a smile, an exasperated Henry intervened. "Stop it. It's embarrassing. Look, I'll buy you one." Overhearing this, Jack muttered under his breath, referring to me. What a stingy woman, lacking compassion. I didn't miss his comment. I could say the same to you. I should have left at that point, but I was a bit stubborn. A similar incident happened twice more afterward. Apparently, the first trip was so enjoyable that Alia contacted Henry for another. When I saw them on the station platform, I couldn't help but feel chills. The second time they brought their wallets, but when the moment came, oh no, this is the wallet I used before. I rushed out in such a hurry. Their obvious lie was something only Henry would believe. And on the third trip, they forgot their wallets again. By then, it was clear it was a deliberate act. Alia, excuse me, but did you deliberately forget your wallet? You never intended to pay, did you? I hit the nail on the head, and her face turned red. Hey, what a rude woman you are. Apologize to Alia. Jack glared at me, demanding an apology. No way. I've thought this for a long time. Both of you are just too greedy. Caught in the argument with the parents-in-law, Henry seemed at a loss. Tourists around us watched curiously, noticing their gaze. Henry seemed to feel ashamed and finally said, "Stop it, please," breaking down crying. I felt truly disillusioned, but the parents-in-law reacted differently. Rushing to a crying Henry, Alia said, "I'm sorry, Henry. It was my fault." "You're so kind to cry for me," with Jack quietly standing beside her. I didn't know how to react to this farce. Only one thought came to mind. Yeah, this is impossible. Let's get a divorce. That was all I could think, seeing Henry's tears. The parents-in-law seemed to lose their fighting spirit. "Leah, we know we're often in the wrong. It's Henry's money. But still, we've taken advantage of him. It's Henry's money after all." I don't know why they said it twice, but their words, dripping with sarcasm, showed no real remorse. And so, it was confirmed that they had deliberately forgotten their wallets. Alia referred to it as Henry's money, but we both work, and his salary is only slightly higher than mine. Our actual incomes are not much different. Recently, every trip with the parents-in-law ended with, "I want to buy this too. Maybe some gifts for the neighbors as well. What's that? Looks tasty. Hey, Henry, buy that for me." Because of their endless demands, Henry's credit card bills were shockingly high. We've been living mostly on my salary for the past few months. At the time of marriage, I considered it family money and believed in spending within the limits of our allowance for personal desires. Don't be a burden to your partner. The thing that infuriated me the most was when cashless reliant Henry exclaimed at our travel destination, "What, only cash here?" He called me over, pulled his wallet out of my bag. It only had a few dollars in coins. "No, I messed up. You know I don't carry cash, right?" he said without malice. It still makes me furious thinking about it. For the record, I'd always paid for my own things, yet the parents-in-law probably thought I was living off Henry's money and just complaining. We split living expenses, So such accusations were nothing but unpleasant. Thinking all this, I coldly watched Henry crying and Jack consoling him. After a moment of thought, I said, I was wrong too. Sorry for being presumptuous. You guys go ahead on the train. I'll buy some drinks and follow. I smiled calmly, and Henry and the parents-in-law happily boarded the train. Their smiles turned to panic a few minutes later when I didn't return. Henry must have felt something was off as he messaged me, Leah, are you coming? The train is about to leave. Right then, the heavy doors slowly closed from the platform. I had a clear view of Henry's panicked face. It seemed he noticed me and was shouting something. I was replying to his earlier message. I'm divorcing you. If your parents are so important, live happily with them. Goodbye. I ignored his calls, thinking, doesn't he care about being a nuisance on the train? Tease. He sent several messages afterward, but I ignored them all. Henry's face through the door slowly turned to anger. Hey, open this door. Are you crazy? I won't forgive you, he said, as if I needed his permission. The parents-in-law seemed to be yelling too, but of course, I couldn't hear them. Smiling at the three fools, I said, let's go, wonder if you'll make it back safely. Good luck. The train quietly departed, quickly disappearing from sight. That train won't stop for a while. Walking back would be quite a challenge. After watching the train leave, I hurried home to pack my bags and left. I stayed with a friend I'd been discussing divorce with. Henry's barrage of messages continued until they suddenly stopped. His phone must have died. He often forgot to charge it before bed, and it was only at 20% this morning. Portable battery chargers are essential. That was Henry's mantra. But his crucial portable battery charger was in my bag, along with his wallet. I left all the belongings he entrusted to me at home. He must be panicking by now, but that's not my concern. While planning my next steps with my friend, my mobile phone rang. The caller was unexpected. Jonathan, Henry's brother. Leah, I'm sorry. Did something happen? According to Jonathan, Henry's phone had run out of battery, and in his panic, he dropped it, shattering the screen. Unable to reach me, the desperate parents-in-law could only think of one person to call. So I got contacted, but all I got was, ask Leah for the reason. He seemed unwilling to say more. I told Jonathan everything about Henry and the parents-in-law without holding back. As I spoke, I could hear Jonathan's voice getting sharper over the phone from the other end. Leah's making a fool of us. Tell her off, Jonathan. The in-laws were loudly insisting that Jonathan, with his way with words, would outtalk me. After I finished explaining, Jonathan snapped, Hey, you scoundrel. Are you stupid? What, you scoundrel? I had heard from Aliyah that when Jonathan gets really angry, he becomes intimidating with a high-handed tone. And since Jonathan only speaks sense, Henry and the parents-in-law can't retort when he gets like that. I could hear the in-laws arguing in the background, but I quietly hung up the phone. Henry was not content with the divorce. But after I conveyed through a lawyer that I wanted to divorce without any further contact, he reluctantly agreed, accompanied by Jonathan. Later, Jonathan told me that the parents-in-law had always been terrible moochers, disliked by neighbors and even school associates. When Henry returned to the ex-in-law's house, he quickly became the talk of the neighborhood, and now all three hardly ever go out. Henry's colleagues, not knowing what to say about the quick divorce, were treating him like a delicate subject. I'm glad to cut ties with them after this incident, Jonathan told me with a laugh. The parents-in-law were known at the local supermarket for their outrageous behavior. This is expiring soon, so give me a discount. It's a little damaged, so I'll take it for free. Jonathan expressed his long-standing embarrassment and disdain for his parents' behavior. Recently, Henry has been seen joining them, reflecting their blood connection. It turned out the parents-in-law were both gambling addicts, often skimping on food expenses, which explained their constant hunger and lack of money. When asked about the reason for my divorce, I can only say it was a difference in values. If anyone can tolerate such behavior, they must be incredibly broad-minded. It was just too much for me. I've continued working and even started a side job as a web writer after my travel blog caught a publisher's attention. I still travel, combining it with writing assignments. Solo travel seems to suit me best. Last month, I earned a decent income from writing, so I'm planning to take a vacation to a resort somewhere far for relaxation. I'm still only 30 years old. Life is just beginning. Greetings, I'm Jenny, aged 27. 3 years back, I tied the knot with Hugo, the most remarkable person I've ever met. He's a delightful goofball, overflowing with kindness and compassion, making each day feel extraordinary. Regrettably, the same sentiment doesn't extend to his mother, Maria, also known as my mother-in-law. For reasons unknown, Maria has harbored animosity toward me since day one, a sentiment I comprehend. After all, Hugo is her cherished son, and she's merely safeguarding his interests. However, I firmly believe she sometimes crosses the line. Maria has a knack for subtle injustices that seem innocent but are actually calculated to incite frustration, painting you as the unreasonable one. We all have encountered someone like her. Unfortunately, she happens to be my mother-in-law. I was brought up differently. I'm inclined to call out nonsense and rarely hold back. Perhaps that's what drew Hugo to me. Our contrasting personalities attracting each other, as they say. Having studied psychology, I can discern Maria's ill intentions. Our dominant personalities clash, which likely led to her first words to me. Jenny, don't you think it's time to stop eating so much? The table fell silent, stunned. Mortification painted my face pale as Hugo Kyle, my father-in-law, and Maria's son, reacted. Hugo, though embarrassed, admonished his mother. Mom, that's terrible to say. Jenny can eat as she pleases. Maria backpedaled, claiming concern for my well-being, citing old photos where I appeared better. Despite my embarrassment morphing into irritation, I kept calm, not wanting to cause a scene during our initial meeting. I graciously accepted her unsolicited advice. As time passed, such incidents increased in frequency and intensity. Despite bonding with everyone, Maria remained the sole dissenter, her disdain unfounded. Even Hugo's childhood friend, Kirak, embraced me. Yet Maria persisted, even on my wedding day, behaving like a bridezilla, trying to undermine me. No, her hair should be in an updo like mine was. But you look so ugly. Maria's antics persisted, but amid the turmoil, I cherished the love and acceptance from the rest of Hugo's family. The gasps from the bridal party were audible, yet I found myself, unsurprised, having grown accustomed to such situations. In an attempt to rectify her words, my mother-in-law hastily backtracked. Oh no, darling, that's not what I meant. You have the potential to look so much better. I see a lot of myself in Jenny. She's a bright young woman. Despite looking better at her age, I'd like to say she's beautiful in her own way. While my father-in-law managed to quell her ruthless antics on that day, the lingering pain and bitterness persisted. It went against my nature to remain silent and passive. My vibrant energy was diminishing, drained by this woman who seemed determined to undermine me. Fast forward 3 years to the current events of our story. We gathered at Hugo's childhood home, his parents' residence, for dinner on a Sunday night. My mother-in-law had graciously invited us, including Jack, indicating something significant was afoot. I had my suspicions, which were later confirmed, making the dinner plan seem more calculated. As the evening unfolded, my mother-in-law seized everyone's attention, announcing an important revelation. Armed with a paper, she began reading. Attention, everyone. I have an announcement. Since my birthday is approaching, I want to share my plans. We're going to Hawaii. The paper confirmed the trip, met with excitement from everyone at the table. That sounds fantastic. What? Amazing news, Jenny. I've always wanted to go to Hawaii. This is great news. I'm so excited. Thanks so much, Ma. Actually, you're not coming. Honey, what do you mean? This wasn't part of the plan. I made some last-minute changes and canceled her ticket before incurring extra charges. So, my ticket was already purchased, and she just canceled it. Why does she hate me so much? Mom, what are you talking about? In the ensuing chaos, Jack and I remained silent. Harsh words flew back and forth until Maria finally offered an explanation. Okay, fine. I'll tell you why I thought Jenny shouldn't join the family event. As I'm getting older, I want to spend my remaining years with those I care about most. Unfortunately, Jenny doesn't belong on that list. Mom, really? What's wrong with you? Nothing's wrong with me. I'm just saying Jenny can't be considered family since she's not related by blood. By that logic, Jack shouldn't go either, right? He's not technically family, as you're stating. But we all know that's preposterous. He is part of the family. Since Hugo and Jenny got married, she's family too. Well, Jack is different. He's always been here, our sweet baby angel. But Jenny hasn't. I'm just not comfortable with her on the trip. It's my birthday, and I get to decide. Come on, Jenny, we're leaving. My resolute no reverberated through the room, capturing everyone's attention, including my adversary, who had been struggling to contain a smile. However, her expression turned serious at once. Maria, it's been evident from the start that you harbor disdain toward me. For 3 years, I've endured your unbearable behavior. Do you think we're blind to your actions? Do you believe we don't see your narcissism? Watch your tone, young lady. Remember, you're in my house. And it won't be for much longer. In fact, I'm about to leave. But before I go, there's something I need to say. I addressed my beloved husband, whose eyes burned with anger as he looked at his mother. Darling, I love you completely, and I've tried to weather this storm for so long. But it's clear now that your mother will never embrace me into this family, no matter how hard I try or how often I hold my tongue. She'll always find fault with me. You should go on this trip. You can't miss it. Despite her quirks, she's still your mother, and you love her, and she loves you. So go. Don't worry about me. I'll manage. Turning to my mother-in-law, who appeared stunned by my words, I continued. And as for you, unfortunately for you, I'm in love with your son, and I'm not going anywhere. You might think you can push me out, but I'm here to stay. Even in Hawaii, you'll be thinking of me because, let's be honest, I think you're fixated on me. How dare you? I ought to slap you right now. I'm not done. You're fixated on me, obsessed with tearing me down, and I can't fathom why when all I've done is extend kindness and patience, even when you didn't deserve it. But enough is enough. If you don't want me in Hawaii or consider me part of the family, fine. But I will always be here. As long as I breathe, I'll be here for Hugo, Kyle, and even Jack, but never for you. In that moment, I realized I had finally silenced her. She stood with her mouth agape, seemingly searching for words that her mind wouldn't allow. I bid farewell to the other family members, kissed my husband on the cheek, and headed towards the exit. Let me drive you home, at least. I can't let you take a cab. Don't worry about me, babe. I love you, and thank you for loving me. But I'll be fine. You have a trip to discuss. Okay, if you say you'll be fine, I'll believe you. Oh, don't forget your purse. Right, my purse. I left it in the kitchen. Upon reaching the kitchen, where Maria had retreated, presumably to catch her breath after the altercation, I encountered her. What do you want? Don't worry about me, sweetheart. I'm just here to collect my things. Well, make it quick. I want you out of my house. I can't believe you said those things to me. With that, she swiftly stormed out, too filled with anger to see me off. In that moment, I scoffed at her absurdity, grabbed my purse, and noticed a piece of paper next to it. Assuming it was the trip itinerary, I grabbed it to sneak a peek at what I was missing. As I began to read, I discovered Maria's handwriting. Dearest Jack, you've always been like a son to me, and I love you dearly. Oh, it's a letter to Jack. A bit strange, but I suppose it's thoughtful. For some reason, my curiosity led me to read further. The love and care you've shown me throughout the years will never be forgotten. Regrettably, even in my son Hugo's case, I feel the love we once shared is no longer there. Wait, is she saying she loves Jack more than Hugo? That can't be right. Persisting in reading the letter, each line intensified my astonishment. The revelations were difficult to fathom. Although I recognized it wasn't my place to read the letter, I couldn't help but be grateful for stumbling upon it. After absorbing its entirety, I paced the kitchen, contemplating my next steps. Suddenly, it struck me. Everyone who needed to know about the letter was in that room. It was time to act. Rereading the letter to confirm its contents, I sauntered into the dining room, where only 3 pairs of eyes met mine. Jenny, I am profoundly sorry for what my wife is subjecting you to. Don't worry at all. You're coming to Hawaii with us. She's just going through a rough patch right now. I'll talk to her and make her see reason. I don't know what's gotten into her, but I'll sort it out, I promise. Kyle, please don't concern yourself with me. As I mentioned, I'm fine. In fact, I've stumbled upon some interesting news that I need to share with everyone, especially Hugo. Hugo and Jack perked up, a flash of worry crossing Hugo's face. Perhaps he feared I was overwhelmed and considering a divorce. Whenever I complained about his mother, he'd empathize, marveling at how I endured her antics. I'd reassure him it was my love for him that kept me going. Noticing Maria's absence, I inquired, "Where is Maria? She needs to be here for this too." I mentioned earlier, she's a bit under the weather after your confrontation. Mentioned a headache and opted for a nap upstairs. She won't be down for a while. You know how she is about her beauty sleep. Familiar with Maria's peculiar habits that often inconvenienced others, I sighed in frustration. This is crucial. She has to be here. It's okay, Jenny. You can share with us, and we'll fill her in when she wakes up. Contemplating the information I possessed, I hesitated. I wanted to witness her embarrassment. I think you should go ahead and tell us, sweetie. It's okay, and you know Hugo struggles with anxiety. It wouldn't be good to keep him waiting. True. Hugo's anxiety could escalate quickly, and I observed him beginning to fidget in anticipation. All right, I'll share with you what I found. While I was in the kitchen, gathering my purse and preparing to leave, I stumbled upon something intriguing that I believe you all need to know about. Retrieving the paper I found, I began to read aloud. It reads, "Dearest Jack, you know that you have always been like a son to me, and you know that I love you dearly. And the love and care you have shown for me throughout the years will never be forgotten. I hate to admit it, but even when it comes to my son Hugo, I feel as though the love we once shared is no longer there. Hugo and I just don't see eye to eye like we used to, and honestly, I think it's because of Jenny. Ever since he married that girl, he no longer has time for me. He doesn't love me, and therefore, I don't think I love him. I love you, and you are my son. With that being said, I want to let you know that I am going to update my will so that you inherit all of my belongings and not Hugo. I know it might hurt him, but honestly, at this point, I don't care. It's that wretched Jenny girl. She's the one who has poisoned my love for him. I hope you receive this letter well. The reason why I didn't want to approach you about it in person is that, and it pains me to admit this, I couldn't risk seeing the rejection on your face. I know you love Hugo like he's your brother, and most likely you won't approve. But I don't care. I'm giving you everything. The money, the house, the cars, and even my small businesses. They're all yours, whether you like it or not. If you want to talk about this further, please call me, and we can discuss it. I look forward to hearing your response. I will love you forever and always, your second mom." After finishing the letter, I glanced up to witness a flurry of mixed emotions. Kyle appeared on the verge of tears. Jack seemed stunned, but Hugo looked like he was on the brink of losing his temper. I can't believe she said all those things. Is she serious? So, she'd exclude me from her, well, just to spite me and Jenny? She's officially lost her mind, guys. I don't even know what to say. This has gone too far. I'm fed up with her toxic behavior. What are we going to do? In that moment, I had an idea. A week passed, and it was time for the planned Hawaii trip. Maria woke up to find a letter from her husband on her bedside table. It read, "Good morning, beautiful. We decided to let you catch up on your beauty sleep. Don't worry, your bags are packed. Just meet us at the airport." Maria hurriedly got ready and rushed to the airport, searching frantically for her travel companions. She tried calling them, but no one answered. Assuming they had already boarded, she boarded her flight, hoping to catch up with them in Hawaii. During the 12-hour flight, she landed and video called Kyle. "Hey, Kyle. Where are you guys? I woke up late and found your note, but none of you are answering. I assumed you boarded without me. Where are you? Let's start the festivities." "That won't be happening, Maria." "What do you mean? Where are you?" "I'm at home." "What? Why are you at home?" "You see, Maria, Jenny brought some important information to our attention last week, and since then, we decided we'd rather spend time in Florida with her than anywhere else with you." Maria gasped. "You think we wouldn't find out?" "What, my baby? Don't baby me. You were really going to cut me out of the will, Mom." Who? How did you even find out about that?" "Oh, that wretched girl you despise so much. Jenny found your letter in the kitchen." "I don't know what you're talking about, Maria. Lying right now is only adding more nails to the coffin. Jack, tell them. You've got to believe me. I did nothing of this sort." "We all read the letter, Maria. The game is up." But I didn't do anything. Jenny is making everything up." "Oh, am I? You are so pathetic. It actually makes me sick. We all know what you said and what you tried to do. Thank goodness I was nosy enough to read the whole thing." "Hugo, Kyle, please." "No, Maria. Enough is enough. You're done. You don't get to say anything else. You messed up big time. Your hatred has caused you to be blind. Now you have to suffer the consequences of being alone on your birthday because of what you've done. I hope you can use this time in Hawaii to reflect on your actions. But I'll be alone. It won't be fun. Maybe people would like to hang out with you more if you weren't such a raging witch. Have fun." And with that, Kyle hung up the phone. We all let out a sigh of relief. I was the first person to start laughing, eventually joined by Hugo, and before we knew it, we were all bursting with laughter at the dining table, just laughing at the sheer absurdity of the situation. The look on her face once she realized the game was up was priceless. Her face turned pale, all the blood drained from her face, and it was evident that it was the first time in a long time that she felt embarrassed. Maria had to spend her vacation alone, frequently calling Kyle to see if he would at least come and join her because canceling the reservations she made would be expensive. But every time he kept denying it, stating that when she comes back, they were going to have to implement some ground rules if she still wanted to be married to him. Maria began to be very apologetic and frantic, a complete 180 from her usual demeanor, which was genuinely surprising. Hugo also mentioned that if Maria still wanted to be in his life, she had to make a drastic change in her attitude. Otherwise, he was ready to walk out of her life forever. Their relationship remained rocky, and Hugo asserted that if Maria ever disrespected him again, even with the smallest snide remark, he would cut her off completely, just as she had planned for him. As for Jack, he decided it was best to stop being overly accommodating to Maria, as it was clearly enabling her toxic behavior. So not only did Maria end up spending a miserable time in a beautiful place, but she also risked losing the 3 most important people in her life. She now has very strained relationships with all of them, and she has to change for the better. Regarding me, I messaged her, stating that I need time to decide if I'm going to forgive her for all of her injustices. She was apologetic and begged me to talk some sense into the men in her life. I refused, stating that this is the bed she made for herself, and now she has to lie in it. To this day, Maria is still attempting to mend the very broken relationships that she caused. I just hope she learned her lesson. Before long, we'll be selling this house and moving into a high-rise condo, so you better start looking for a new place. Maggie's mother, Karen, sneered, "You're not thinking you'll get a dime of our father's inheritance, are you? We're having you relinquish your right to it. You got that, Ashley?" My sister threatened me, her face a horrifying mask of cruelty. Ashley's boyfriend stood to the side, his laughter only adding salt to the wound. It was unbearable. Our father's funeral had barely finished, and they dared to talk like this. You heard the absolute worst. I can't stand this anymore. I'm cutting ties with you all. The moment I shouted those words, the doorbell rang. Standing there was a man I felt like I'd met before. My name is Maggie. At 22, I'm soon to graduate from university. Nothing to brag, but I'm strong-willed and patient. From my childhood through university, I've always quietly and diligently focused on my studies. I've maintained reasonably high grades, and I do have dreams I want to fulfill. Although I'm content with my daily life, I'd also have a significant worry. Maggie, come downstairs now. A loud voice rang from below. With reluctance, I went downstairs to find my mother, Karen, and my sister, Ashley. Mom, sis, what's up? I was studying, as usual. You nerd. You're still studying even though university is almost over. What a hard worker. The one laughing was my sister, Ashley. A beauty like our mother, she's flamboyant and was even a popular model back in the day. Now she's unemployed, under the gaze of helping around the house. We're going shopping? You should clean the dishes and do the laundry. Don't forget to iron properly, okay? Also, we're out of detergent and other things, so you should go shopping. Mother calmly ordered me to do the housework, knowing she would get furiously angry if I talked back. I quietly responded, okay. I left the house stressed out to the nines and high in spirits. I need to get on with that, I muttered quietly as I started to clean up the mess they had left behind. Mom, a former beauty queen, has extravagant tastes and loves luxury. She's always favored my beautiful sister while ignoring me since I'm not all that pretty. Moreover, they've always dumped housework and other chores on me as if I'm their maid. My sister took advantage of this, and I've been oppressed by them since I was little. Yet I've tolerated it because, after all, we are family. And then my phone rang. When I looked at my phone screen, it read Dad. Hello, Dad, it's been a while. I could tell my voice had brightened. Oh, Maggie, it's been a while. Are you doing okay? I'm doing great. How about you, Dad? It's night there, right? How's work? I'd like to say I'm fine, but I've been having headaches lately. I'm planning to go see a doctor soon. How's your schoolwork? Is it going well, Dad? Take care of yourself, okay? Thanks to you, everything is going well. I'm studying hard to achieve my dream. That's my girl. You're always so diligent. Remember what I always say, be righteous and kind, right? Don't worry, I'm doing my best. That's my Maggie. I'll bring lots of souvenirs when I come home next time. After that conversation, I hung up the phone. To put it bluntly, my family is well off. This was largely due to my elite father, Harry, who has been flying around the world for work since his younger days. Although he was often away from home, he was kind to me and showered me with love whenever we had the chance to meet. I adored him dearly. However, to my mother, Karen, and my sister, Ashley, he was nothing more than an ATM. The harsh truth was that they were living lavishly on the money he earned. Be righteous and kind, Maggie, he would say. His presence was always nurturing and supportive. He was my rock. That's why I was able to stay strong until now. Several months later, shortly after I graduated from university, a chilling event occurred. Maggie, Dad has... Karen burst into my room, her face as pale as a ghost. Apparently, my father had collapsed at the airport as soon as he returned home and was rushed to the hospital. Upon hearing the news, Ashley, Karen, and I immediately headed to the hospital. There, my once strong father lay frail and helpless. We suspect he's had a stroke, the doctor informed us. Despite extensive treatment, my father barely improved. To be specific, he was left with severe physical paralysis and a speech impairment, unable to stand or converse properly. To care for my now dependent father, I decided to put my dreams on hold and dedicate myself to his care at home. Predictably, Karen and Ashley completely ignored him, treating him as if he was useless. They didn't even help with his care, let alone come by to see him. Mom, Ashley, if you helped with Dad's care once in a while, I'm sure he'd be really happy, I pleaded. However, their response was always the same. We're too busy. We've left Dad's care to you. Dad, it was a lovely day today, I would tell him. "Thank you," he would struggle to reply. I studied and learned about caregiving. I made sure he could see outside by keeping the curtains open, fed him specially prepared meals, and arranged fresh flowers every day. Though I had help from professional caregivers, I did everything I could for him with all my heart, remembering my father who had worked so hard for us and showered us with love. I was desperate to do everything. Whenever times got tough, I would recall my father's words, "Maggie, always be righteous and kind," and each time it gave me the strength to carry on. One day, I overheard Karen and Ashley whispering in the house. "Thanks to Dad's insurance money, I was able to buy that bag I wanted," Karen said. "I know, right? Thanks, Dad. Maybe I should get a new wallet too," Ashley chimed in. I held back from yelling at them and continued to listen, only to hear Karen utter something even more shocking. "If Dad were gone, we'd receive a few $100 million from his life insurance and inheritance he's been saving up through his job and investments." "Wow, Mom. And we should totally buy a luxury condo, and my boyfriend could live with us." "Oh, I wish Dad would hurry up and die." Indeed, I couldn't bear it any longer and left the scene. My father was struggling to stay alive, and yet they were spending his insurance money and dreaming about a luxury condo from his inheritance, wishing for him to die sooner. I felt like vomiting out of anger and despair. In reality, my mother and Ashley had been living it up recently, buying up brand name items and even leaving my father and me behind to go on overseas trips. But there was no way I could tell my father, who was already having such a hard time. I didn't want to sadden him. Pretending I hadn't heard my mother and Ashley's conversation, I devoted myself to taking care of my father. Many friends and acquaintances often came to visit him. They all loved him. I particularly remember an older man in a suit and glasses who often came. I wasn't present, but he was probably an executor from my father's company or something. He would bow his head and greet me whenever he saw me. I was happy that my father was loved, and on the days when he had visitors, his face seemed brighter. I thought these days would continue, but a few months later, my father had a stroke recurrence and suddenly passed away. I cried, clinging to my father's body that no longer spoke. Even my mother and Ashley shed tears this time, mourning the loss of my father. What followed was a whirlwind. There was a wake and a funeral to be held, and of course my mother, the chief mourner, did nothing. Neither did Ashley. In the end, I had to go through all the procedures by myself, running around in a rush. The wake ended, and many people attended the funeral, with numerous flowers arriving as well. Seeing the character and popularity my father had in life, I felt somewhat comforted. At the funeral, sobbing voices echoed, and my father, with a peaceful face, embarked on his journey. In the evening of the day when the first 7 days were over, I had finally started to recover a bit from the sadness. As I was cleaning up the 7th day, my mother and Ashley called me into the living room. Next to Ashley was a man who was said to be her fiancé. Like Ashley, he looked good, but given his former job as a male stripper, his inner frivolity was clear. Apparently, his name was John. "So about father's inheritance," my mom began. I had a terribly bad feeling, and then my mother, laughing scornfully, said something outrageous. "We'll get a lot from your father's inheritance, so we decided to sell this house and live in a luxury condo. So you should leave." "Mom, it's only been a week since Dad passed away. Are you already talking about the inheritance and the luxury condo?" "We've already signed the contract. It's a high-rise, brand new." "You've already signed. When did you?" "About a month ago, I guess." "A month ago. But Dad was still doing fine." He was practically dying. He had a lot of money, so it'll work out fine." My mother was selfish as ever. Ashley continued, "Yes, that's right. The luxury condos for Mom, me, and my fiancé. So, you're a nuisance. You should hurry up and find some shabby apartment, okay?" "Even you, sis? Are you serious?" "Of course. Don't even think about getting any of Dad's inheritance. We'll have you renounce it. You understand, right?" Ashley was approaching me with a terrifying expression, and next to her, her fiancé was laughing. Seeing my father's inheritance in the corner of my eye made me feel suffocated. It was too much. They had the nerve to say such things before my dad's mourning was even over. You guys are the worst. I can't stand it anymore. I'm cutting ties with both of you. Huh? We'd actually feel relieved if you cut ties with us. My mother and Ashley laughed at me. I clenched my fists and started trembling. At that moment, the front doorbell rang. Straightening my trembling breath and wiping my tears, I'd opened the door, thinking it might be a late visitor. Good evening, my condolences for your loss. The man who deeply bowed his head at the entrance was the middle-aged man in a suit and glasses who frequently visited my father's sickbed. Thank you. Please come in. As I was about to invite him in, the man presented his business card. Please check this. My name is Watson, an attorney assigned by your father. The business card indeed belonged to a law firm, and although I had not noticed it before, a badge denoting him as a lawyer was gleaming on his chest. A lawyer? I was surprised. My mother, Ashley, and her boyfriend came out from behind. Huh? What does a lawyer want from us? Watson responded to my mother's skeptical expression. I've come to discuss your husband's inheritance. Can we talk for a moment? Watson sat down in the living room. My mother sat directly across from him, and Ashley and her boyfriend sat next to her. I ended up sitting on the side facing them alone. Watson took out several documents from his bag, looked at us, and then began to speak slowly. First, may I read your husband's will? That man could barely move or speak, and yet he left a will. Get on with it, please. My mother spoke in an irritated tone. Then allow me to read it, Watson said in a quiet voice. The testator, Harry, hereby bequeaths as follows. The testator leaves all property belonging to him to his second daughter, Maddie. A moment of silence fell upon the room. The testator designates the following as the executor of the will. Before Watson could continue reading, Ashley interrupted. Wait a minute. What did you just say? Didn't you hear me? The testator designates the part before that. Let me read it again. The testator, Harry, hereby bequeaths all property belonging to him to his second daughter, Maddie. What does that mean? Karen, our mother, and Ashley exclaimed in unison. I was so shocked that I couldn't breathe, and all I could do was stare in astonishment. Watson continued, Next, I will read the postscript of the will, looking at me. In other words, this is your father's final message. I quietly listened as he read. Maggie, you gave up your precious dreams to take care of me. I wasn't able to pay much attention to you because I was always working, but I truly appreciate it. Thanks to you, I was able to pass away peacefully and fulfilled. Upon hearing my father's last words from Watson, tears started to well up in my eyes. Maggie, always be kind and correct. I know you can do it. Your father will always be watching over you. Please be happy. All I could do was sob in front of them while Karen and Ashley were making a big fuss. What does that mean? So the inheritance all goes to her? Yes. What happens to our money? In response to their outburst, Watson cast a brief glance at them. You two are not mentioned, by the way. Maggie is also the sole beneficiary of the life insurance. What are you talking about? Do you think that's allowed? Karen turned beet red, ready to burst at any moment. That's right. Isn't there something called a reverse portion that's supposed to be guaranteed to the wife and the children, right? Ashley leaned forward eagerly. You're referring to the statutory reserve. Indeed, you two have the right to claim a statutory reserve from the inheritance Maggie will receive, Watson said in a matter-of-fact tone. Of course, Karen seemed to be getting back to her usual self. Even if there is a will, if its contents are unfair, you can claim a share of the inheritance prescribed by the civil law. However, Watson continued, Harry had commissioned us to investigate the fact that you, Karen, and you, Ashley, were living luxuriously with Harry's money and squandering the insurance money. The eyes of Karen and Ashley widened in astonishment. Indeed, you purchased a luxury condominium and a car, and you spend quite lavishly on host clubs and overseas trips. All the caregiving and household chores were left to Maggie alone. Moreover, there were even remarks hoping for Harry's death. My father knew everything. He knew everything but pretended not to know. That's my mother. Stammered Watson responded calmly. In this case, it's unlikely that the distribution of the inheritance will be deemed unfair. Even if you take it to court, it's very unlikely you'll be able to claim anything. Of course, you can try if you wish. I'll be the one you'll be set up against. My mother's face had turned a pale blue. That's ridiculous, my sister also muttered. When Watson was leaving and I walked him out to the entrance, he said, "Maggie, you have grown up to be quite admirable. Your father always spoke of you with such joy. Really, my father has known your father since we were young, and I was honored to take on this request. Your father felt he was too lenient with the other two, but I believe he found peace knowing how well you turned out." Watson's eyes were squinted in a warm smile. I was so touched that I teared up again. "Please live a happy life from now on. You know I'm always here to help." Watson left me with those words, and I kept bowing deeply to him. A year later, with Watson's help, I was able to inherit all of my father's assets. As for my mother and sister, my mother, unable to pay off the loans for the high-rise condominium, had already contracted the expensive car and the designer goods, eventually went bankrupt. My sister, on the other hand, was quickly abandoned by her boyfriend when he learned that she wouldn't be inheriting anything. I heard through the grapevine that she's now living with my mother and working part-time. They called me for a while, but I kept replying, "I've cut ties with you. Please contact me through a lawyer." I thought that was what my father wanted too. Now they don't contact me at all. As for me, I used my father's inheritance to attend a law school I had once given up on. Originally, I wanted to become a prosecutor to uphold my father's words, always be kind and correct. But now my dream has changed. After working with Watson, who had saved me in my time of need and provided unwavering support, I started to admire being a lawyer myself. So now, I'm studying hard to become one. I strongly wish to become a lawyer like Watson, who is always just and kind. In order to provide some background, my mother-in-law is the type of person who enjoys flaunting even the smallest achievements in the most extravagant manner. Despite lacking any sophistication in her own life, she goes out of her way to pretend that she is the talk of our society. One glaring example of her absurd behavior is the monthly club party she hosts. To clarify, there is no actual club. She merely invites her friends and coworkers for an evening gathering because they share the same profession. She refers to them as her fellow aita. This peculiar ritual has been ongoing for quite some time. During these gatherings, all they do is brag about their accomplishments and achievements from the past month. Given the context, you can imagine how eager my mother-in-law was to announce that my grandfather had arranged a destination wedding for me, complete with a 6-day stay package. This was his generous gift to me, as I had shared my dream wedding plans with him on numerous occasions. Considering my limited budget and the size of the venue, I had meticulously curated a guest list. My husband and I had discussed the situation beforehand, and both agreed to prioritize our guests. Coming from a large family, narrowing down the guest list was challenging, but I managed to invite 22 people, while my husband invited 18 of our close friends and family members whom we regularly interacted with. We were all set to send out the invitations when my mother-in-law unexpectedly showed up at our house late one evening, uninvited and unwelcome. It was already 9 p.m., and her presence irritated me from the start. She demanded that we make changes to the guest list. I couldn't fathom why she believed she had a say in the people I wanted to invite to my own wedding. My husband, to my dismay, supported her stance, which raised immediate concerns for me. I inquired about the changes she wanted, and she mentioned that she had already promised a few of her work friends an invitation. These friends, she claimed, were part of her IT Geeks group. I politely informed her that there was no room left on the guest list, as every invitee was someone we had a close relationship with and interacted with regularly. I sought support from my husband, but he avoided my gaze and sided with his mother. Despite explaining the situation to her, she insisted that I make adjustments. Frustrated, I showed her the guest list, emphasizing that every individual on it was someone intimately connected to our lives, and there was simply no way to exclude them. She then suggested removing my cousin's sister, whom I had lived with for 7 years after college. Her reasoning was that my cousin had moved to Birmingham recently, and it would be inconvenient for her to travel to the States. My patience wore thin, and I asked my husband to reason with her, but he continued to support her perspective, emphasizing the importance of inviting her chosen guests, especially after she had shared details about the destination wedding with them. I tightened my lips in frustration, feeling utterly lost on how to reason with my own fiancé, who was clearly being irrational. My anger boiled over, prompting me to storm out of the room. The following day, I woke up with a resolve. I would give them a taste of their own medicine. If they could be so thoughtless about my wedding, all for the sake of saving face in front of their colleagues, then I could be equally inconsiderate. I dialed my grandpa and recounted the events from the previous night. When I finished explaining, I made it clear that I wouldn't waste my energy trying to make them see reason. Instead, I decided to strip away the main attraction from their little charade. I informed my grandpa, whom I love dearly, that I was removing him and grandma from the guest list, along with my dad's brother and his family. I also asked him to resign the gift he was giving me since he was no longer invited. Thankfully, my grandfather understood my intention and supported me without harboring any resentment. When I sent the updated guest list to my mother-in-law and fiancé, they were taken aback. I calmly informed them that those were the only individuals I could remove, but in doing so, we had lost our wedding venue. I made sure my fiancé understood the urgency of finding a new venue within the next 2 months or postponing the wedding. Additionally, there was the hassle of reprinting the invitation cards and arranging accommodations for out-of-town guests. I wanted both of them to grasp that none of this predicament would have arisen if it weren't for the generosity of someone in my family who had funded half of our wedding. However, I didn't expect them to suddenly start apologizing for their actions. My mother-in-law came over again, expressing remorse for coercing me into altering the guest list. She implored me to call my grandpa and invite him back, asking him not to cancel the hotel reservation or make any changes. I couldn't help but wonder why she was apologizing now, after she had already achieved what she wanted. She had made a commitment to her colleagues, and now they were receiving invitations. This weighed heavily on her, and she vocalized her frustration, noting that inviting them wouldn't make sense unless the wedding was at a destination. She emphasized that a non-destination wedding would be ordinary and uninteresting to others. Upon hearing her express these thoughts, my husband finally admitted that he regretted supporting her decision. However, I wasn't ready to let his actions off the hook so easily. I reminded him that he shouldn't need extreme measures for him to support me in obvious situations. Although he apologized once again, I made it clear that my decision was final. It was a done deal, and even if I were to re-invite my grandpa, we wouldn't get back his incredibly generous gift. Was I being an angel for standing my ground? I recognized that, ultimately, the wedding was mine, and I should focus on myself. Yet, I couldn't help but feel a bit petty about not reversing my decision. Did this make me a bad person? However, my mother-in-law wasn't finished causing problems for us. As I mentioned in my previous post, I had no intention of asking my grandpa to reinstate his gift. This decision visibly upset my mother-in-law to the point where she began a habit of calling my fiancé every other day. She portrayed me as an ungrateful troublemaker seeking revenge. While, yes, I had taken certain actions that made me feel good, her labeling me ungrateful when she was responsible for this situation felt like too much. But it didn't end there. She went a step further, advising my fiancé to reconsider his life decisions, insinuating that what I had done was just the beginning and that his life would be this way if he married me. During one of these conversations, my fiancé was speaking on speakerphone, and I'd overheard these hurtful words. I was grateful for this transparency because I knew that my fiancé typically concealed anything that could potentially create discord in our relationship. He did tell his mother that she had crossed the line, but he didn't confront her more assertively. It's his relationship with his mother, and I understand that I can't ask him to sever ties with her just because she dislikes me. However, I am aware that if her interference continues, I might reach a breaking point, as I can't imagine enduring this for the rest of my life. Today, I had a heart-to-heart with my grandpa, sharing the news about the new wedding venue we had secured. While it didn't align with the vision I cherished my whole life, it was still a beautiful place, and I found happiness in it. I reassured him that he was invited again, and his laughter warmed my heart. My gratitude and love for him overwhelmed me. He had consistently supported me in everything I did, and he continued to do so now. Confronting my husband about my mother-in-law's escalating behavior became necessary. Our conversation delved into the awkwardness certain situations had created and the pain they had caused. In the end, my husband promised to address the issue with his mother and clarify her role in our lives. I hoped for a smooth journey forward, devoid of any more drama. Finally, the wedding day arrived, and I am now officially married. Despite the unexpected turns, the wedding was a thing of beauty, and my happiness knew no bounds. I couldn't help but smile when I noticed my mother-in-law sulking in a corner with her work friends, whom she had invited. In a surprising turn of events, my grandpa gifted us a house as a wedding present, a joint gesture from him and my uncles. In the grand scheme of things, I am just thrilled to embark on this new chapter of my life with my husband. I wanted to share this update with all of you who have been a part of this journey in your own way. It infuriates me when people believe they have the audacity to dictate how someone should get married or whom they should invite. It's high time someone reminded your mother-in-law that her time to influence these decisions is over. If she wants to flaunt, she can plan her own event in the future. You should firmly tell her to back off and leave you in peace. Are you absolutely certain about marrying that guy? Anyone with an ounce of insight would have seen through the manipulative game your mother-in-law was playing, and yet he supported her. You're not clueless, but perhaps you should scrutinize your life choices more closely. On a personal note, I live in Queensland while my family resides in New South Wales. Recently, my parents and my 27-year-old sister decided to invite themselves to my house for a week-long holiday after their cruise got canceled. Frankly, I wasn't thrilled about them staying for such an extended period, especially considering I'm pregnant and already juggling the responsibilities of caring for a 2-year-old. To complicate matters, our house isn't spacious enough to accommodate multiple guests. I have only one spare queen-size bed, which my parents were occupying. My sister, however, opted to sleep on my couch. She could have shared my bed with me since my husband is away for work, but her snoring and my constant nudges to roll over didn't make it a viable option. After 2 days of their stay, during dinner on the second night, my dad dropped a bombshell. He casually mentioned that they had invited my sister's boyfriend of just 5 weeks to fly up and stay with us for the entire weekend. He had already booked a ticket and would be arriving on Friday morning at 9 a.m. I had never met my sister's boyfriend. After all, he had only been part of the family for 5 weeks. What infuriated me was that no one bothered to consult me beforehand. Moreover, I didn't have the space for him to stay comfortably. He would have had to sleep on my couch, and my sister would either need to share the couch or my bed with him. The idea of a stranger sleeping in my house while my 2-year-old son was in his own room was unsettling. In sheer frustration, I called my husband, and together we decided to firmly refuse the arrangement. We believed their behavior in inviting a stranger into our home was completely unacceptable. When I called my sister to communicate our decision while I was at work, my mother exploded in anger. She berated me, questioning my judgment and accusing me of doubting their ability to judge someone's character. According to her, they wouldn't invite someone into our house who couldn't be trusted, even though they had met him fewer than 10 times. Eventually, they hung up on me, hastily packed their belongings, and left my house. Later, they sent me a text message claiming that my husband had manipulated my thoughts against them, and that they were leaving not because they were wrong, but because I had been an inhospitable host. According to them, I had become a terrible person since being with my husband for the past 10 years. 3 days passed, and they attempted to call me, acting as if nothing had transpired. Their inability to comprehend my reaction left me utterly baffled. I am left wondering if anyone can shed light on their perspective and help me make sense of this situation. Am I overreacting? I don't think so. I believe I was being a responsible parent, not an unreasonable person. I didn't invite them, and I certainly don't have a serial obligation to be a gracious host to a family that essentially invaded my home. To top it off, they invited a fourth person, a complete stranger, to stay without my knowledge or consent. Their entitlement is baffling. It's almost like they can't stand the fact that I've grown up and am making decisions without seeking their approval. This is the moment to establish boundaries. In my response, I made it clear that I'm not a terrible host because I didn't invite them in the first place. They invited themselves. I generously accommodated them despite the disruption to our usual routines. However, inviting another person into my home without my consent was completely unacceptable. Their tantrum when I refused to cave in and their subsequent decision to leave for alternative accommodation, all the while attacking my character, means there will be a new set of rules before I consider hosting them again. I won't be going to hang out with them after the immature behavior they displayed in my house. I've had enough of their inappropriate actions for now, and I've decided to limit my contact with them until I feel I can face them again. They crossed a line by inviting someone I've never met into my home without my approval. They didn't ask, they simply informed me that it was happening. The fact that they mentioned my seemingly good mood indicates they were aware it wasn't a good idea. They assumed I would be a pushover and allow it. I'm standing up for myself and the safety of my children, and I know I'm not in the wrong here. I'm a 33-year-old woman, currently 5 months pregnant, while my 35-year-old husband is away on a business trip, set to return next month. This is my first pregnancy, and recently, I've been required to continue working at the office. When I first met my husband, he was incredibly skinny, and his eating habits were restricted due to his mother's cooking. She avoided spices, sauces, herbs, and even salt, sugar, and pepper, believing this bland approach was healthier. My husband grew accustomed to this tasteless diet, but when he tried my cooking, he realized there was a world of flavor beyond his mother's limited recipes. One Wednesday, I indulged my curry craving and made a large batch. While I usually had pre-prepared meals in the freezer, this time, I gave in to the temptation. I left the extra portions in the fridge. On that day, my in-laws unexpectedly visited, having a spare key in case of emergencies. When I returned home, ready to enjoy my curry, I found it replaced by a dish made by my mother-in-law, who had thrown my meal away, claiming it tasted spoiled. Unable to stomach her cooking in my pregnant state, I discreetly gave the unwanted food to a homeless person. However, someone witnessed my act of kindness and informed my in-laws. Suddenly, I found myself bombarded with accusatory messages, even from my mother-in-law. My husband supported me, but now I'm questioning if I overreacted. Honestly, OP, it seems like your in-laws are trying to control your life. Their invasion of your home, even when you're not there, is a huge red flag. And while the focus seems to be on your mother-in-law throwing away your food, the real issue here is the lack of boundaries. Setting firm limits with your in-laws is essential before your child is born. Consider changing the locks and installing security cameras to maintain your privacy and peace of mind. Remember, your home is your space, and you deserve to feel safe and respected within it.
This is a real business, not some kind of hobby. Victoria Bennett's voice cut through the boardroom like a knife, her perfectly manicured hands spread flat against the polished mahogany table. We need someone who understands the corporate world, not just tinkering. I sat across from her, my back straight despite the trembling in my hands. 6 years of research and development, countless late nights in the lab, all the breakthroughs I'd achieved for Bennett Technologies. And this was how it ended. Mother, Daniel, my husband, started from his seat beside me, but Victoria silenced him with a sharp look. No, Daniel, this isn't up for discussion. The board agrees with me. Olivia's experiments might have been entertaining when we were a smaller company, but we're going public in 6 months. We need real leadership, not a scientist playing at being an executive. My name is Olivia Foster Bennett, and at 32, I was about to be forced out of the company I'd helped build. Not that Victoria would ever admit my contributions. To her, I was just the girl who'd married her precious son, the one who didn't quite fit into her polished corporate world. The timing of the product launch is critical, Victoria continued, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. We need someone with real business experience to handle this. Margaret will be taking over the R&D department effective immediately. Margaret Phillips, Victoria's goddaughter, sat at the far end of the table, trying and failing to hide her smug smile. She'd been gunning for my position since she joined the company 3 months ago, armed with an MBA from Wharton and a pedigree Victoria approved of. I glanced down at the papers in front of me, the transition agreement they expected me to sign. A generous severance package, they called it. More like hush money to keep me quiet while they pushed me out. And if I refuse? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Victoria's smile tightened. Then we'll have to revisit your employment contract. I'm sure you remember the non-compete clause. It would be a shame if you couldn't work in this industry for the next 5 years. Of course I remembered. I'd helped draft that contract back when I thought I was protecting our company, our family. How naive I'd been. Daniel shifted uncomfortably beside me. Mother, maybe we should discuss this further. Olivia's work has been crucial too. Enough, Daniel, Victoria snapped. This isn't about sentiment, this is business. The board has made its decision. I looked around the room at the board members, men and women who'd watched me grow this company from the ground up. None of them would meet my eyes. They were all too afraid of Victoria Bennett, the CEO who turned her late husband's small tech firm into a major player in the industry. What they didn't know, what Victoria had forgotten in her rush to push me out, was that I'd done more than just tinker in my lab. Every major breakthrough, every patent that had made Bennett Technologies a valuable acquisition target, had my name on it. Not the company's name. Mine. But I kept that knowledge to myself as I stood up, gathering my papers with steady hands. I'll need time to review these documents with my lawyer, I said calmly. Victoria waved dismissively. Take all the time you need. But I expect your office cleared out by the end of the day. Margaret needs to hit the ground running. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I walked toward the door, I heard Margaret's voice, sickly sweet. Don't worry, Olivia. I'll take good care of your projects. I didn't respond. Let them think they'd won. Let them believe I was just another corporate casualty pushed aside for someone with better connections and the right background. They had no idea what was coming. The elevator ride down to my office felt surreal. 6 years of memories flashed through my mind. The late nights working on prototypes, the breakthrough moments, the celebrations when we landed major contracts. I'd met Daniel here, both of us fresh out of graduate school, idealistic and ready to change the world. He'd been different then, before his mother's influence had slowly chipped away at his backbone. The Daniel I fell in love with would have stood up for me, would have recognized the injustice of what was happening. But that Daniel had disappeared somewhere between our wedding day and his promotion to CFO. When I reached my office, my soon-to-be former office, I found boxes already stacked by the door. They hadn't even waited for me to agree to their terms. Typical Victoria, always assuming she'd get her way. I sat down at my desk one last time, running my fingers along the smooth surface. This wasn't how I'd imagined my last day would be. I'd always thought when I left, it would be on my terms, maybe to start my own company or take on a new challenge. Instead, I was being pushed out by a woman who'd never accepted me, never seen me as anything more than an inconvenience, the scientist who'd somehow trapped her son into marriage. My computer pinged with a new email. From Victoria, of course. HR will assist with your exit process. Please ensure all company materials remain on premises. We'll mail any personal items after they've been cleared by security. Regards, Victoria Bennett, CEO, Bennett Technologies. I couldn't help but laugh. She really thought she had everything under control. She'd probably already drafted the press release announcing Margaret's promotion, spinning some story about exciting new leadership and fresh perspectives. Opening my drawer, I pulled out a small USB drive. one that Victoria didn't know existed. On it was everything I'd need: copies of my patent applications, email trails proving my ownership of key technologies, and documentation of every breakthrough I'd achieved while carefully maintaining my individual rights. Victoria had been so focused on pushing me out that she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd never signed over my patents to Bennett Technologies. They had a license to use my technology, yes, but the underlying intellectual property? That belonged to me. I slipped the drive into my pocket just as there was a knock at my door. Daniel stood there, looking uncomfortable in his perfectly tailored suit. "Liv," he said softly, using the nickname he hadn't used in months. "I'm sorry. I tried to talk to her, but you know how she gets." I stared at him, really looking at my husband for the first time in a long while. When had he become this? This weak, spineless version of the man I'd married? "Did you know?" I asked quietly. "Did you know she was planning this?" He couldn't meet my eyes. She mentioned some concerns about the IPO, about how investors might perceive. Perceive what, Daniel? That your wife actually knows what she's doing? That I'm more than just some hobby scientist playing at business? "That's not fair," he protested weakly. "Mother's just trying to do what's best for the company." I shook my head, disappointment heavy in my chest. "No, she's doing what's best for her image, and you're letting her, just like you always do." He took a step forward, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. "Don't," I said. "Just don't." The hurt in his eyes might have moved me once, but not today. Not after this. "I'll have my things out of the house by tonight," I told him, turning back to my desk. "I think it's best if I stay at a hotel for now." "Liv, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." I started gathering my personal items. The few things that weren't company property: my framed diplomas, a photo of my parents, the small robot figurine I'd built in college that had started me on this path. "We can work this out," Daniel said, hovering in the doorway. "Once the IPO is done, maybe." I cut him off with a sharp laugh. "The IPO, right? Good luck with that." He frowned, catching something in my tone. "What do you mean?" But I just shook my head, picking up my bag and a small box of belongings. "Goodbye, Daniel. Tell your mother I'll have my lawyer review those documents." As I walked past him, he caught my arm. "Olivia, wait. What are you planning?" I gently removed his hand, meeting his eyes one last time. "You know what your mother always says. It's just business, nothing personal." I left him standing there, confusion written across his face. Let him wonder. Let them all wonder. Because while Victoria Bennett might have won this battle, thinking she'd outmaneuvered her inconvenient daughter-in-law, she had no idea what was coming. In 6 months, when Bennett Technologies tried to launch their new product line, my product line, they'd learn exactly who they'd underestimated. But for now, I had work to do. Real work, not the corporate games Victoria was so fond of playing. I had patents to review, lawyers to meet, and plans to make. After all, Victoria had taught me one valuable lesson. In business, timing is everything. And my time was just beginning. As I drove away from Bennett Technologies for the last time, my phone buzzed with texts from Daniel. "Please come home. We can talk about this. Mother didn't mean to be so harsh. Don't do anything rash." I ignored them all, focusing on the road ahead. The signs for downtown Atlanta blurred past as I made my way to the one person who would understand exactly what I needed to do next. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of Carter & Associates, one of the city's top intellectual property law firms. Marcus Carter had been my advisor's attorney back in graduate school, and he'd helped me set up my patent portfolio when I first joined Bennett Technologies. He was waiting for me in the lobby, his dark eyes sharp behind his glasses. "I saw the writing on the wall months ago," he said as he led me to his office. "Been waiting for your call." I settled into one of his leather chairs, finally letting some of my tension show. Victoria finally made her move. Marcus nodded, pulling out a thick file. "And you're sure you want to do this? Once we start, there's no going back." "Victoria Bennett isn't known for taking challenges lightly." "Neither am I," I said firmly. "Show me what we need to do." For the next 30 hours, we went over everything: my patents, the licensing agreements, the careful paper trail I maintained. Marcus had helped me structure everything perfectly from the beginning, ensuring that while Bennett Technologies had the right to use my technology, they didn't own it. "The timing works in our favor," Marcus said, making notes. They can't launch the new product line without your patents, and any attempt to work around them would set them back years. The IPO would be dead in the water. I leaned back, a plan forming in my mind. So we wait. We wait, he agreed. Let them announce the launch. Let them start the IPO process. Then we show them exactly who they're dealing with. As I left Marcus's office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Victoria thought she'd backed me into a corner. But she'd actually given me exactly what I needed: freedom to make my next move without her constant surveillance. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Daniel. Mother wants to know if you've reviewed the documents yet. Please don't make this difficult. I smiled, thinking of the documents sitting untouched in my bag. Victoria's carefully crafted severance agreement designed to keep me quiet and compliant. Tell her I'll have an answer soon, I typed back. Oh, I'd have an answer for Victoria Bennett, just not the one she was expecting. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. I moved into a small but modern apartment in Midtown, throwing myself into preparation. During the day, I met with lawyers, investors, and potential partners. At night, I reviewed my research, identifying which technologies were most crucial to Bennett's upcoming launch. Victoria, meanwhile, wasted no time announcing my departure. The press release was exactly as I predicted. Bennett Technologies announces new R&D leadership Margaret Phillips to head Innovation Division as company prepares for growth. The article quoted Victoria extensively, praising Margaret's fresh perspective and strong business acumen. My name wasn't mentioned once, as if my 6 years of contributions had never existed. Daniel continued to text and call, his messages growing increasingly worried as I maintained my distance. He'd moved back to his parents' mansion in Buckhead. Temporarily, he claimed, though we both knew better. We need to talk about this, he said when I finally answered one of his calls. About us. There isn't much to talk about, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Your mother made her choice. You made yours. By not fighting her? What was I supposed to do? Live? She's the CEO. You were supposed to stand up for what's right, Daniel. For once in your life, you were supposed to stand up to her. He was quiet for a moment. Is that why you won't sign the severance agreement? To punish me? I almost laughed. He still didn't get it. No, Daniel. I'm not signing because I don't need their money. And soon, they're going to need something from me far more than I need anything from them. What are you talking about? Liv, you're starting to sound like your mother, I suggested. Maybe she taught me more than she realized. I ended the call before he could respond. Let him worry. Let him wonder. He'd find out soon enough. 3 months after my forced departure, Bennett Technologies made their big announcement. Victoria had gathered the press, analysts, and major investors for a special presentation at their headquarters. I watched the livestream from Marcus's office, a cold smile playing at my lips as Victoria took the stage in her signature power suit. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice confident and clear. Today marks a new chapter in Bennett Technologies' history. Under the brilliant leadership of our R&D director, Margaret Phillips, we are preparing to launch a revolutionary new product line that will change the face of medical technology forever. The presentation that followed was slick and professional, full of promises about breakthrough innovation and unprecedented market potential. Margaret stood beside Victoria, basking in the praise as they unveiled prototypes of devices that I had designed, technologies that I had created. When they opened the floor for questions, a familiar face stood up. Sarah Chen from the Wall Street Journal, known for her sharp analysis of tech companies. Ms. Bennett, Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the stream. These technologies seem remarkably similar to patents held by Olivia Foster. Can you comment on the licensing arrangements? The briefest flicker of uncertainty crossed Victoria's face before her media training kicked in. All intellectual property used in our products is properly licensed and documented, she said smoothly. Bennett Technologies has full rights to everything we're presenting today. I turned to Marcus, who was already reaching for his phone. Shall we? He nodded, a predatory smile spreading across his face. Time to show them what a real business looks like. I pulled out my own phone and opened the email I prepared weeks ago. One click, and Victoria Bennett's carefully constructed plans would start to crumble. Send it, I said. The email went out to every major tech publication, every analyst following Bennett Technologies, and every investor invited to today's presentation. PKNT challenges Benit Technologies right to new product line. Olivia Foster announces review of all technology licenses. The reaction was immediate. On a live stream, I watched as phones started buzzing throughout the audience. Victoria was still talking, but people had stopped paying attention, their faces buried in their screens. Then Sarah Chen stood up again, interrupting Victoria mid-sentence. Ms. Bennett, we've just received a statement from Olivia Foster claiming that Bennett Technologies' license to use her patents expires in 3 months, before your planned product launch. Would you care to comment? The look on Victoria's face was worth every moment of humiliation I'd endured. For once, the great Victoria Bennett was speechless, and this was just the beginning. The chaos that followed my announcement was everything I'd anticipated and more. Victoria tried to maintain control of the situation, but the damage was done. Investors were already leaving the presentation, phones pressed to their ears as they called their brokers. Margaret stood frozen on stage, her carefully rehearsed speech forgotten. I closed my laptop, turning to Marcus with a satisfied smile. How long before she calls? He checked his watch. Given her temper, 3, 2, 1. My phone lit up with Victoria's number right on cue. You should take it, Marcus advised, already reaching for his notepad. Remember, every word matters now. I answered on the third ring, keeping my voice professional and calm. Hello, Victoria. What do you think you're doing? She hissed, her composure finally cracking. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Actually, I do, I replied. I'm protecting my intellectual property rights. Isn't that what you taught me about business? Always protect your assets? Your assets. She practically spat the words. Everything you developed was for Bennett Technologies. You can't just. Can't what, Victoria? Can't stand up for myself. Can't run a real business. I let my words sink in before continuing. Check your contracts. Every patent, every innovation you just promised your investors, they're all licensed to Bennett Technologies under my name. And those licenses expire in exactly 3 months. There was a long pause. I could almost see her face, that perfectly controlled mask slipping as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. What do you want? She finally asked, her voice tight. I want what I've earned, but we can discuss the details with our respective legal teams. I'm sure you'll want to review everything thoroughly this time. This isn't over, she warned. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. I ended the call and looked at Marcus, who was grinning broadly. Well done, he said. Very well done. But we both knew this was just the opening move. Victoria Bennett hadn't built her empire by backing down from a fight, and she wasn't about to start now. Sure enough, within hours, Bennett Technologies' legal team began flooding Marcus's office with demands and threats. They claimed my patents were developed under work-for-hire agreements. They threatened to sue for breach of contract. They even tried to argue that my marriage to Daniel gave the company rights to my intellectual property. But Marcus and I had prepared for everything. Every contract, every patent application, every piece of documentation had been carefully structured from the beginning. I might have been naive about office politics, but I'd never been naive about protecting my work. Daniel showed up at my apartment that evening, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. His tie was loose, his hair a mess from running his hands through it. Can I come in? He asked when I opened the door. Please, Liv. We need to talk. I considered turning him away, but something in his expression made me step aside. He walked in, taking in my new space, the modern furniture, the small but well-equipped home office, the wall of technical books and journals. You've been busy, he said quietly. Someone once told me that success requires dedication. I replied, thinking of all the times Victoria had lectured me about real business. He sank onto my couch, looking defeated. Mother's furious. The board is in panic mode. Our stock dropped 15% after your announcement. 23%. I corrected him. I've been watching the markets. He looked up at me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time in years. You planned this all along, didn't you? Even before they pushed you out? No, I said honestly. I planned it the moment your mother made it clear that my contributions meant nothing to her. The moment she tried to steal my life's work and hand it to Margaret like it was hers to give. She didn't understand. She understood perfectly. I cut him off. She just didn't care. She never has. To her, I was just the scientist who wasn't good enough for her son, who didn't fit into her perfect corporate image. That's not true, he protested weakly. Really? I moved to my desk and pulled out a file. These are copies of emails between your mother and Margaret going back 6 months. Planning my removal, discussing how to handle the transition of my projects. Want to know what your mother wrote about me? He shook his head, but I continued anyway. She called me a necessary inconvenience that needed to be managed out before the IPO. Said it was time for you to think about your future and consider more suitable partnerships. Daniel's face paled. Where did you get those? I'm a tech expert, remember? The one your mother thought was just playing at business. I sat down across from him. The question is, did you know about this plan? He couldn't meet my eyes. I knew she wasn't happy about us. About how it would look to investors, having a researcher in such a key position. But I never thought she'd actually do it, or never thought I'd fight back. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, Daniel looked up, his eyes tired and sad. What do you want, Liv? Name your price. Whatever it takes to fix this. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Fix this? You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about money, Daniel. This is about respect. About recognition for what I've built. What price would you put on that? Mother will never agree to give you back your position, he said. You know how she is. I don't want my position back, I said, standing up. I don't want anything from Bennett Technologies. What I want is for Victoria to understand exactly what she lost when she decided to throw me away. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Thompson Medical just reached out. They want to meet. I smiled, remembering Victoria's dismissal of my tinkering. Thompson Medical was Bennett Technologies' biggest competitor, and they'd been trying to break into the same market sector for years. You should go, I told Daniel, moving toward the door. I have a meeting to prepare for. He stood slowly, looking lost in his perfectly tailored suit. Liv, please, don't do this. Don't destroy everything we've built. I'm not destroying anything, I said softly. I'm building something new, something of my own. After you left, I sat down at my desk and pulled up the presentation I'd been working on. Thompson Medical wasn't the only company interested in my technology. Without Bennett Technologies' restrictions, without Victoria's constant interference, I was free to explore all the applications I'd been forced to shelve. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, negotiations, and legal maneuvers. Victoria, true to form, tried every trick she could think of to regain control. She had her PR team spin stories about corporate espionage and betrayal. She tried to pressure mutual business contacts to blacklist me. She even attempted to freeze my personal bank accounts, claiming they were tied to company assets. But for every move she made, I was 2 steps ahead. The patents were mine, the documentation was clear, and the technology market was hungry for innovation. While Bennett Technologies' stock continued to fall, my own prospects were rising. Thompson Medical wasn't just interested in licensing my existing patents. They wanted to fund my research into new applications, with complete creative control and a significant equity stake in the resulting technologies. They're offering you a seat on their board, Marcus told me during one of our strategy sessions. Victoria is going to lose her mind when she finds out. I was reviewing the proposal when my phone buzzed with an unexpected name, Margaret Phillips. Should I take it? I asked Marcus. He shrugged. Could be interesting. Hello, Margaret, I answered, keeping my tone neutral. Olivia. She sounded nervous, nothing like the smug woman who'd taken my office. I need to talk to you. In person. It's important. I considered refusing, but curiosity won out. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. There's a cafe called the Edison on Peachtree. Don't be late. Margaret was already waiting when I arrived the next morning, fidgeting with her coffee cup. Her designer suit looked slightly rumpled, her usual perfect appearance showing signs of strain. Thank you for meeting me, she said as I sat down. I know you probably hate me. I don't hate you, Margaret, I interrupted. I nothing you. You're just another player in Victoria's game. She flinched but pressed on. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. About Victoria. About what's really been happening at Bennett Technologies. For the next hour, Margaret laid out a story that confirmed my worst suspicions and revealed new ones. Victoria hadn't just wanted to push me out. She'd been systematically undermining my work for years, taking credit for my innovations while ensuring I remained in a subordinate position. She has files, Margaret said, her voice low. Documentation she's been building, trying to prove the patents should belong to the company. She's planning to sue, to tie you up in court until you're forced to settle. I smiled, thinking of my own carefully maintained records. Let her try. You don't understand, Margaret insisted. She's desperate. The IPO is falling apart, investors are pulling out, and Thomson Medical just announced their new partnership with you. She's talking about criminal charges, about fraud. Is that why you're here? I asked, studying her carefully. To warn me, or to save yourself? She had the grace to look ashamed. Both, she admitted. I thought I was getting my dream job. But it's all built on lies, and when it falls apart. I sat back, considering. Margaret might be naive and ambitious, but she wasn't evil. She was just another pawn in Victoria's chess game. Send me copies of everything, I said finally. All the files, all the documentation. Do that, and I'll make sure you land on your feet when this is over. Her relief was palpable. Thank you, she whispered. I'll send everything tonight. As I walked back to my car, I felt the final pieces of my plan falling into place. Victoria thought she could bury me in legal battles. Fine. Let her try. I had truth on my side, and now I had evidence of her attempted fraud. That evening, as I was reviewing Margaret's files, Daniel called again. Mother's calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow, he said without preamble. She's going to try to force through a lawsuit against you. I know, I replied calmly. You know. I know everything, Daniel, including what your mother's been planning for years. The question is, what are you going to do about it? He was quiet for a long moment. What do you mean? I mean, are you going to keep standing by while she destroys the company your father built? While she burns everything down rather than admit she was wrong? What choice do I have? There's always a choice, I said softly. You just have to be brave enough to make it. The next morning, I dressed carefully in my favorite power suit, not one of the ones Victoria had helped me choose, but one I bought myself after leaving Bennett Technologies. It was time for the final act. Marcus met me in the lobby of Bennett Technologies headquarters, both of us armed with files and evidence. We timed our arrival perfectly, just as the board members were gathering for Victoria's emergency meeting. Ready? He asked as we stepped into the elevator. Ready, I confirmed. The boardroom fell silent as we walked in, Victoria freezing mid-sentence at the head of the table. Daniel sat to her right, Margaret to her left, both looking pale but determined. What is the meaning of this? Victoria demanded. This is a private board meeting. Actually, I said, setting my files on the table, this is exactly where we need to be. We have evidence of systematic fraud, attempted patent theft, and corporate espionage. Evidence that every person in this room needs to see. How dare you, Victoria began, but the board chairman cut her off. Let her speak, he said, his eyes sharp. Given the company's current situation, I think we all need to hear this. For the next hour, I laid out everything, the documentation of my patents, the evidence of Victoria's attempts to steal them, the proof of her long-term plan to push me out while taking credit for my work. Margaret's files provided the final devastating pieces of evidence. When I finished, the silence in the room was deafening. Victoria stood, her face flushed with rage. This is ridiculous. She's trying to destroy this company out of spite. No, Mother, Daniel's voice cut through her protest. She's trying to save it. From you. All eyes turned to him as he stood, straightening his shoulders. I moved for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current CEO. Victoria's face went white. Daniel, what are you doing? What I should have done years ago, he said, standing up for what's right. The vote was unanimous. Within an hour, Victoria Bennett was no longer CEO of Bennett Technologies. Within 2 hours, the board had approved my proposal. A partnership with Thomson Medical that would save both companies while protecting my patents. As the board members filed out, already talking about transition plans and damage control, Daniel approached me. I know it's too late, he said quietly. Too late for us, I mean, but thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Take care of the company, Daniel. Make your father proud. 6 months later, I sat in my new office at Thomson Medical, looking out over the Atlanta skyline. The wall behind my desk displayed my patents. Not hidden away in a lab, but proudly showcased for everyone to see. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Bennett Technologies announces successful merger with Thomson Medical. Former CEO Victoria Bennett retires. I smiled, thinking of how far I'd come from that day in the boardroom when Victoria had tried to dismiss me as just a hobbyist playing at business. Now I was on the board of directors at one of the largest medical technology companies in the country. My innovations were saving lives, and I was finally truly free. Victoria had taught me one last valuable lesson. Success isn't just about having the right patents or the right technology. It's about knowing your worth and being brave enough to fight for it. As I turned back to my work, I noticed a small package on my desk. Inside was a familiar object, the robot figurine from my college days that had started me on this path. With it was a note in Daniel's handwriting. Thought this belonged with its creator. Thank you for teaching me what real business looks like. D. I placed the figurine on my desk, a reminder of where I'd started and how far I'd come. Victoria had tried to write me off as just another hobbyist, but she'd forgotten the most important rule of business. Never underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Absolutely not, Sarah. I don't care what kind of personal emergency you think you have. The Peterson account presentation is next week, and I need everyone focused and present. Victoria Marshall's voice cut through the air like a knife, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her mahogany desk as she stared me down. I stood my ground, clutching the medical leave request form in my trembling hands. Ms. Marshall, please. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't critical. The patient. She interrupted, her red lips curling into a sneer. You're an account executive, Sarah, not a nurse. Whatever medical drama you're caught up in isn't our concern. This is a marketing firm, not a charity. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. I understand that, but this is different. He has no one else, and his condition is deteriorating rapidly. I just need 1 week. Enough. Victoria slammed her hand on the desk, making me jump. I've heard enough of your excuses. You've been distracted for weeks, taking long lunches, leaving early. Now you want a whole week off right before our biggest presentation of the year. The answer is no. I felt my chest tighten. Victoria had always been harsh, but this was different. This was cruel. Ms. Marshall, I've never taken a sick day in 3 years. I've worked every holiday, every weekend you've asked. I'm just asking for this one. 1 week that could cost us millions, she cut in, standing up to her full height. At 5'10" in her designer heels, she towered over me. Do you have any idea what the Peterson account means to this firm? Of course you don't. You're too wrapped up in your little humanitarian project to see the bigger picture. The way she said humanitarian project made it sound like a dirty word. I thought about the man lying in the hospital bed across town, his kind eyes and gentle smile despite the pain he was in. He didn't deserve to die alone just because Victoria Marshall couldn't see past her quarterly projections. I'm taking a week, I said quietly but firmly. I'll work remotely nights, weekends, whatever it takes. But I need to be there for him. Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. Are you defying me, Sarah? I'm doing what's right. She laughed, a cold, harsh sound that echoed through her corner office. What's right? Let me tell you what's right. What's right is doing your job. What's right is being a team player. What's right is understanding that in this business, we don't have the luxury of playing Mother Teresa. I stood there, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken. I understand if you need to write me up or dock my pay, but I'm taking a week. Victoria walked around her desk slowly, like a predator circling its prey. Oh, I'll do better than that. She picked up my leave request form and tore it in half, then quarters, letting the pieces flutter to the floor. You're fired. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I refused to let her see me flinch. You're firing me for requesting medical leave. I'm firing you for insubordination, poor performance, and failure to prioritize company interests. She smiled, the expression never reaching her eyes. Enjoy unemployment, Sarah. I'm sure your patient will appreciate your sacrifice. I should have felt devastated. 3 years of my life, countless 60-hour weeks, all the missed family events and canceled vacations, all gone in an instant. But standing there in Victoria's office, watching her smug satisfaction, I felt something else entirely, relief. Thank you for making this decision easier, I said, turning to leave. Oh, and Sarah, Victoria called after me. Don't bother asking for a reference. As far as I'm concerned, you never worked here. I walked out of her office with my head held high, ignoring the curious stares of my soon-to-be ex-coworkers. My hands were steady as I packed up my desk, carefully placing my photos and personal items into a cardboard box. Jenny from accounting hurried over, her face full of concern. "Sarah, what happened?" I heard raised voices. "Victoria fired me," I said simply, wrapping my favorite coffee mug in newspaper. "What? She can't do that. Not over medical leave." I smiled at Jenny's outrage. "She can, and she did. But it's okay, really." And surprisingly, it was. As I walked out of the glass and steel building that had been my professional home for the past 3 years, I felt lighter than I had in months. My career might be in shambles, but I knew I was doing the right thing. The hospital was a 20-minute drive from the office. As I navigated through mid-A traffic, I thought about how I'd ended up here. It had started. Thomas Edwards didn't look like a man worth millions. In his faded hospital gown, with his silver hair thinning and his face gaunt from chemotherapy, he looked like any other patient. But it was his eyes that caught my attention, bright, alert, and filled with a kindness that seemed to defy his circumstances. "The Great Gatsby again," he'd said when I walked in with the book. "Don't you think that's a bit on the nose for a cancer ward?" I laughed, surprised by his humor. "Would you prefer something more upbeat?" I have the bell jar in my back. That had made him laugh too, a warm, genuine sound that seemed to brighten the sterile hospital room. We'd spent the next hour talking about literature, life, and everything in between. By the time I left, I knew I'd met someone special. Over the next few weeks, I found myself visiting Thomas more frequently. He told me about his life, how he built his investment firm from nothing, how he'd lost his wife to cancer 15 years ago, how his children were scattered across the globe, too busy with their own lives to visit their dying father. "It's my own fault," he'd said without bitterness. "I spent so many years building my empire, I forgot to build relationships. Now look at me, all the money in the world and not a soul to share it with." But that wasn't entirely true anymore. Because he had me. I pulled into the hospital parking lot, grabbing my box of belongings from the passenger seat. As I walked through the familiar corridors toward Thomas's room, I thought about Victoria's words, "Enjoy unemployment." She had no idea that some things were worth more than a steady paycheck or a corner office. Thomas was awake when I walked in, his face lighting up despite the obvious pain he was in. "Sarah, what are you doing here so early? Don't you have work?" I set my box down and pulled up my usual chair beside his bed. "Change of plans. Looks like I'll be able to spend more time here after all." He studied my face carefully, his keen intelligence not dulled by illness or medication. "What happened?" "I got fired," I said simply. "My boss didn't appreciate me requesting medical leave to be here with you." "Sarah," his voice was filled with concern. "You shouldn't have done that. Not for me. I'm not worth." "Don't," I interrupted gently. "Don't say you're not worth it. Every human being deserves to have someone by their side during times like this. Besides," I added with a smile, "that job was slowly killing my soul anyway." He chuckled weakly. "Well, when you put it that way," his expression turned serious. "But what will you do now?" I shrugged, trying to appear more confident than I felt. "I'll figure something out. Right now, let's focus on getting your pain levels under control. The nurse mentioned you refused your morning medication." Thomas looked sheepish. "It makes me too groggy. I hate not being able to think clearly. And I hate seeing you in pain," I countered, reaching for the call button. "Let's compromise. Take the medication, and I'll read to you until you fall asleep." I brought a new book. He raised an eyebrow. "Please tell me it's not the bell jar." We both laughed, and for a moment, the weight of everything, my lost job, his illness, the uncertainty of the future, seemed to lift. The nurse came in with Thomas's medication, and I settled in to read, pulling out a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. As I read, watching Thomas slowly relax as the pain medication took effect, I thought about how sometimes the biggest sacrifices lead us exactly where we're meant to be. Victoria Marshall thought she was punishing me, but in reality, she'd given me something priceless, the freedom to be exactly where I needed to be, doing exactly what I needed to do. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a story that would change both our lives forever. The next few days fell into a rhythm. I'd arrive at the hospital early in the morning, armed with books, crossword puzzles, and an endless supply of terrible jokes that somehow always made Thomas smile. We'd talk for hours about his business empire, my dreams of starting my own marketing consultancy, the books we loved, the lives we lived. Between monitoring his medication schedule and coordinating with his medical team, I learned more about Thomas Edwards the man, not just Thomas Edwards the patient. I learned about his first business venture, a failed computer repair shop in the 1980s that taught him more about resilience than any success ever could. I learned about his late wife, Margaret, and how her passion for art had influenced his early investment choices in emerging digital art platforms. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the hospital window, casting long shadows across the room, Thomas asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Why did you really give up your job for me, Sarah?" I looked up from the newspaper crossword we'd been working on together. "I told you." "You told me what you thought I needed to hear," he interrupted gently. "But I want the truth." I set the newspaper aside, considering his question. "Do you remember your first week here, when I was reading to the patients?" He nodded. "I read to 17 people that day. 15 have family with them. 1 have friends visiting. You were the only one alone." I met his eyes. "When I asked the nurse about you, she said you'd been here for 3 weeks without a single visitor." It broke my heart. "Ah," he said softly, "pity then." "No," I said firmly, "not pity. Recognition. I recognize something in you that I've always seen in myself. The tendency to give everything to your work, to your goals, until one day you look up and realize you've forgotten to build connections along the way." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "You're too young to be so wise," he finally said. "And you're too important to be alone," I countered. He smiled, though his eyes were suddenly bright with unshed tears. "Important? I'm just a foolish old man, who built one of the largest investment firms in the country," I finished, "who revolutionized ethical investing practices, who created thousands of jobs and changed countless lives. Yeah, I did my research." "Google?" he asked, amused. "LinkedIn, actually. Your profile needs updating, by the way." We both laughed, and the heavy moment passed. But something had shifted between us. A deeper understanding, a recognition of kindred spirits despite our differences in age and circumstances. As the week progressed, Thomas's condition began to deteriorate more rapidly. The doctors spoke in hushed tones about making him comfortable and managing expectations. But Thomas himself remained clear-eyed and determined. "Sarah," he said one evening as the hospital settled into its nighttime routine, "I need you to do something for me." "Anything," I replied, and I meant it. "In my briefcase, the one my secretary brought last month, there's a letter. I need you to deliver it for me." I found the briefcase tucked away in his room's small closet, its leather worn but still elegant. Inside was a sealed envelope, addressed simply to Victoria Marshall, CEO, Marshall and Associates Marketing. My heart stopped. "Thomas." "Yes," he said, watching my reaction carefully. "Victoria Marshall, your former boss. Though she doesn't know it, her company's recent success is largely due to my firm's quiet investment and guidance." I stared at the envelope in my hands, my mind racing. "You knew? All this time, you knew where I worked?" He nodded. "I recognized your company ID card that first day. I've been following Marshall and Associates' progress for years. It's one of my more interesting investments." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to get to know you as Sarah, not as an employee of a company I partially own." He shifted in his bed, wincing slightly. "And I'm glad I did. It showed me exactly who you are, someone who would give up everything to help a stranger, even when it costs you dearly." I sat down heavily in my chair, the envelope feeling suddenly heavy in my hands. "What's in the letter?" "The truth," he said simply. "About investment strategies, about company direction, about leadership." He paused, his expression hardening slightly. "About how true success isn't measured in quarterly profits or market share, but in how we treat people." I looked at the envelope, then back at Thomas. "When do you want me to deliver it?" "Tomorrow," he said. "I think it's time Victoria Marshall learned a few things about the real costs of success." As I left the hospital that night, the letter safely tucked in my bag, I couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow would bring. Victoria Marshall had tried to break me, thinking she held all the power. But sometimes, life has a way of evening the score. not through revenge or malice, but through simple truth and justice. Little did Victoria know, her world was about to change forever, and I had a front row seat to watch it happen. The next morning, I stood in front of Marshall and Associates' gleaming office building, Thomas's letter clutched in my hand. The same security guard who had wished me good morning every day for 3 years now looked at me apologetically. "I'm sorry, Ms. Collins, but you're not on the approved visitor list anymore. Ms. Marshall's orders." I smiled, pulling out my phone. "Could you please call up to Victoria's office? Tell her I have a letter from Thomas Edwards." The guard's eyes widened slightly at the name. Clearly, he recognized it. After a brief call, he handed me a visitor's badge, his expression puzzled. "Ms. Marshall will see you immediately." The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt surreal. Just a week ago, I'd been rushing up here, juggling presentation materials and coffee, desperately trying to balance my work life with my volunteer commitments. Now I was calmer than I'd ever been, knowing that what happened next would change everything. Victoria's assistant jumped up when I stepped out of the elevator. "Ms. Marshall is waiting for you," she said, hurrying to open the office door. I noticed she couldn't quite meet my eyes. Word of my firing had clearly spread. Victoria sat behind her desk, her posture rigid, her expression carefully neutral. "Sarah," she said coolly, "I assume this isn't a misguided attempt to get your job back." I placed Thomas's letter on her desk. "No, Victoria. This is a delivery from Thomas Edwards." She stared at the envelope, her perfectly manicured hand hovering over it. Thomas Edwards, the investor. The same. I sat down without being invited, enjoying the flash of annoyance that crossed her face. "He asked me to deliver this personally." Victoria's eyes narrowed as she picked up the envelope. "How do you know Thomas Edwards?" "He's my patient," I said simply. "The one you fired me for helping." The color drained from Victoria's face as the implications hit her. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the letter, her eyes scanning the contents rapidly. I watched as her expression shifted from disbelief to horror to something close to panic. This can't be right," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "What's wrong, Victoria? Not the letter you were expecting." She looked up at me, her usual composure completely shattered. "He's pulling his investment. All of it. Effective immediately." She shuffled through the papers frantically. "This would ruin us. The Peterson account, the new office expansion, everything. It's all backed by his firm." "I know," I said quietly. "You know." Her voice rose sharply. "You knew about this and you didn't say anything. When exactly should I have mentioned it? While you were firing me, or while you were threatening to blacklist me from the industry?" Victoria stood up abruptly, starting to pace behind her desk. "We have to fix this. You have to help me fix this. Talk to him, explain that it was all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I interrupted, my voice hardening. "You fired me for trying to help a dying man. You mocked my compassion and treated basic human decency like a character flaw. That wasn't a misunderstanding, Victoria. That was a choice." She stopped pacing, turning to face me. "Please," she said, and I was shocked to hear real desperation in her voice. "I'll give you your job back, a promotion, a raise, whatever you want. Just help me save this." I thought about Thomas, lying in his hospital bed, still thinking of others even as his own time grew short. I thought about all the employees at Marshall and Associates who lived in fear of Victoria's moods and arbitrary decisions. I thought about Jenny from accounting crying in the bathroom after another public humiliation, and Mark from creative who had missed his daughter's recital because Victoria demanded last-minute changes to a presentation. "I don't want my job back," I said finally, "but I will tell you what Thomas told me to say when you made this offer." She leaned forward eagerly. "Yes?" "He says you have a choice. You can keep his investment, keep your position, keep everything, but only if you agree to some changes." "What changes?" I pulled out another envelope, this one containing the document Thomas had drafted late last night. Complete restructuring of the company's management style. Implementation of proper work-life balance policies, fair medical leave, regular employee satisfaction surveys with real consequences for poor leadership. Oh, and, I paused, enjoying the moment, I'll be overseeing the changes as the new director of employee relations. Victoria's jaw dropped. "You're joking." "Thomas Edwards doesn't joke about business," I said. "You have until the end of the day to decide. Accept these terms or watch everything you've built crumble." She sank into her chair, all pretense of superiority gone. He's really dying, isn't he? Yes, I said softly. He is, and his last act in business will either be saving this company from its toxic culture or making an example of it. The choice is yours. Victoria stared at the documents for a long moment. Finally, she looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something like respect in her eyes. You planned this, didn't you? Getting close to him, telling him about the company. I shook my head. No, Victoria. I just showed kindness to someone who needed it. Everything else, I gestured to the letters on her desk. This was all Thomas. He's been watching this company for years, waiting to see if you'd grow into the kind of leader he could trust. Last week, you showed him exactly who you are. The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. Victoria picked up a pen, her hand only slightly shaking as she signed the documents. I assume you'll want your own office. Corner office, I corrected. With a view. And I start next week. When I left Victoria's office, the whole floor was eerily quiet. Word would spread soon enough about what had happened. But for now, I savored the peace. I had one more stop to make. Thomas was sleeping when I returned to the hospital, his breathing shallow but steady. I sat in my usual chair, taking his frail hand in mine. It's done, I said softly. She signed everything. His eyes fluttered open, and a small smile crossed his face. Never doubted she would. Victoria Marshall isn't stupid. Ruthless, maybe, but not stupid. Thank you, I said, squeezing his hand gently. For everything. He shook his head slightly. No, Sarah. Thank you. You showed me that even at the end, it's possible to make a difference, to leave things better than we found them. Over the next few days, I split my time between the hospital and the office, setting up the new policies that would transform Marshall and Associates. Victoria, to her credit, threw herself into the changes with the same intensity she'd once used to terrorize her employees. Maybe she was just protecting her investment, or maybe something had genuinely shifted in her understanding of leadership. Thomas held on long enough to see the first employee satisfaction survey results, smiling weakly as I read him the overwhelmingly positive responses. See, he whispered. Sometimes the best investments are in people. He passed away peacefully 3 days later, holding my hand as I read to him from The Great Gatsby. His final joke about inappropriate book choices for a hospital ward. At his memorial service, I was surprised by the number of people who attended. Not just business associates and employees, but people whose lives he had touched in quiet ways. Scholarship recipients, small business owners he'd mentored, charity workers he'd supported anonymously. Victoria was there too, standing quietly at the back, looking thoughtful. A month later, I sat in my new corner office, reviewing applications for our expanded employee assistance program. Jenny from accounting poked her head in, grinning. You'll never believe what just happened, she said. Victoria approved all the flexible working requests, all of them, and she smiled while doing it. I laughed, glancing at the photo of Thomas I kept on my desk. People can surprise you sometimes, I said, especially when someone shows them a better way. As I looked out over the city skyline, I thought about how life has a way of coming full circle. Victoria had fired me for showing compassion, thinking it was a weakness. Instead, that same compassion had led me to Thomas, who showed us all that true strength lies in how we treat others. The company culture at Marshall & Associates was transforming, slowly but surely. Victoria was learning to balance ambition with empathy, and employees were finally feeling valued and heard. It wasn't perfect, change never is, but it was progress. Every morning, as I walked into the building, I remembered Thomas's words. Sometimes the best investments are in people. He had invested in me when I was just a volunteer reader, seeing something worth nurturing. Now I was investing in others, creating the kind of workplace where kindness wasn't seen as weakness, and where success was measured not just in profits, but in the lives we touched. Victoria still had her moments of old habits creeping back, but now there was a system in place to check her worst impulses. More importantly, she was beginning to see the benefits of a happier, more loyal workforce. Productivity was up, turnover was down, and our reputation in the industry was soaring. 1 year to the day after Thomas's passing, I received a package from his lawyers. Inside was a letter, written in his familiar shaky handwriting during his final days. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, a year has passed since our paths crossed. I hope by now you've seen the fruits of our little experiment in corporate transformation. But more than that, I hope you've realized something about yourself. You see, when you walked into my hospital room that first day, I didn't just see someone with a kind heart. I saw a leader, someone who understood that true power comes not from authority, but from empathy, someone who could change not just one company, but potentially an entire industry's approach to human capital. That's why I've left you something else: voting shares in my investment firm. Use them wisely. Look for other companies like Marshall and Associates, businesses with potential held back by toxic leadership. Change them too. You once told me that you gave up your job because you recognized something in me. Well, I recognize something in you too, the future of ethical business leadership. Make me proud. With gratitude and faith, Thomas. I sat in my office for a long time after reading that letter, watching the sun set over the city. In my inbox were dozens of emails from other companies asking about our transformation, wanting to know our secret. On my desk were reports showing record profits alongside unprecedented employee satisfaction scores. Victoria knocked on my door, holding 2 cups of coffee, a peace offering that had become our weekly tradition. "Good news," she said, handing me a cup. "The Peterson account just renewed their contract. They said it's because of our new corporate culture initiatives." I smiled, thinking of that day a year ago when she fired me over this same account. "Funny how things work out, isn't it?" She nodded, looking thoughtful. "You know, I never thanked you properly for what you and Thomas did. You could have destroyed this company, but instead you saved it. Saved me too, if I'm being honest." "Thank Thomas," I said softly. "He believed in the power of second chances." "And third and fourth," Victoria added with a wry smile. "I should know." As she left my office, I looked again at Thomas's letter. "Make me proud," he'd written. But I knew he already was proud, not just of me, but of every person in this building who had embraced change, who had learned to balance profit with compassion, who had discovered that success and kindness weren't mutually exclusive. Tomorrow, I would start looking at other companies, seeking out those who needed the same transformation. But for now, I sat in my corner office, sipping coffee and watching the city lights come alive, grateful for the twist of fate that had brought me to Thomas's hospital room, and for the chain of events that proved sometimes losing everything is the first step to gaining something better. The next morning, as I walked into the building, the security guard who had once apologetically turned me away now greeted me with a warm smile. "Good morning, Miss Collins. Making any lives better today?" I thought about Thomas, about Victoria, about all the changes we'd made and all the changes still to come. "Every day," I replied. "That's what good investments are all about." And somewhere I knew Thomas was smiling.